Chapter 708. In fact, what perfected Liu Shenyuan didn't know was that after Zhenling obtained many inheritances from the Ying Tian sect, Lu Ping was naturally most concerned about the inheritance related to alchemy. Naturally, Zhenling wouldn't hide anything from Lu Ping. In the past 10 years, apart from closed-door cultivation, Lu Ping had been studying alchemy and reading the inheritance ancient books. In addition, he had received the pure Yang soul inheritance from Fei Tian Laozu, so his knowledge level had been significantly improved. He was no longer the same as the Lu Ping who had just become an alchemy guru 10 years ago. Putting aside the fact that Lu Ping's words made perfected Guzhou and perfected Fei Hong lose their reserve and pride in front of Lu Ping, perfected Liu Shenyuan saw that although Lu Ping had the upper hand, it also made the situation a little awkward. Hence, he smiled and said, "Since we're all here, there shouldn't be much difference in time. I think we should start preparing to open the Fist Valley space now." Perfected Liu Xuanyuan's words received everyone's approval, but perfected Jian Ming looked at Lu Ping with some hesitation and said, "Opening the Fist Valley space now is naturally not a problem, but opening the Fist Valley space requires the cooperation of 6 late-stage core forging realm cultivators. We naturally won't doubt perfected Liu Xuanyuan's strength, but it's inevitably a little inappropriate if one person takes care of 2 places to open the formation." Perfected Liu Shenyuan was stunned. Tianshan Laozu didn't tell him about this before they came. Now it seemed that Tianshan Laozu only sent Lu Ping, a late-stage core forging realm cultivator. Now that he heard perfected Jian Ming's words, perfected Liu Shenyuan couldn't help but look back at Lu Ping. Lu Ping naturally knew what perfected Liu Shenyuan meant, so he smiled and said, "This time, I'm the only late-stage core forging realm cultivator from Immortal Academy, but don't worry, there won't be any mistakes in opening the space channel." Lu Ping's words naturally couldn't convince everyone here. If there was a careless mistake, everyone would have to wait for another 300 years, not to mention the loss of a large number of spiritual herbs. Lu Ping revealed a faint smile. A pair of flying swords suddenly appeared in Lu Ping's surroundings. Then, under the fearful eyes of the other sect's true masters, as well as the fanatical eyes of Immortal Academy's disciples, autumn waters faintly soared, pointed one towards the southeast, one towards the southwest, the 2 separately flying out 3 to 5 li. Then, under the shocked eyes of Daoist Master Ji, who knew how many times, he casually displayed several sets of ordinary sword techniques. Daoist Master Jian Ming finally guessed why Lu Ping suddenly appeared behind them. This Daoist Master Shen Ping must have investigated the collapsed space in advance, but what made Daoist Master Jian Ming feel strange was that besides alchemy, this Daoist Master Shen Ping was also interested in space arrays and other miscellaneous knowledge. The distance between the 2 flying swords was exactly the distance between the 6 bases of the space arrays to open the space. Compared to Daoist Master Jian Ming, who was quite knowledgeable in space arrays, Daoist Master Jiyu Hun and Pang Feiyun paid attention to Lu Ping's powerful divine sense. The strength of a cultivator's attack depended on the cultivator's cultivation and true essence, and the range of the attack was limited by the range of the cultivator's divine sense. The fact that Lu Ping could display the 2 flying swords from such a distance proved that Lu Ping's divine sense cultivation far surpassed everyone else's. Daoist Master Jian Ming laughed dryly and said, "In that case, let's begin. There's no hurry." Lu Ping waved his hand and said, "Although junior brother Shen Fang has already instructed the sect's disciples, I came late because of some matters. There are still some matters that I need to take note of, so please wait a moment." Daoist Master Jian Ming frowned and was about to refute. "You came late because of yourself. You can't let everyone wait for your Ying Shan Immortal Academy." However, before he could say anything, he heard Daoist Master Jiyu Hun suddenly say with a smile, "Daoist Master Shen Ping, please do as you please. Anyway, the space will be open for a month, so it won't make much of a difference." Daoist Master Jian Ming bitterly shut his mouth and did not say anything. Lu Ping glanced at Daoist Master Jian Ming and smiled faintly. Then, he stretched out his hand and waved. After Lu Ping's arm waved, a multicolored light enveloped him and the group of Immortal Academy disciples, leaving only Daoist Master Liu Shenyuan and Daoist Master Shen Fang outside, exchanging pleasantries with the other 2 sects' cultivators. When Immortal Academy's disciples heard that Elder Shen Ping was actually going to personally instruct them on something, Their faces immediately revealed excited expressions. What kind of person was Elder Xian Ping? He was publicly acknowledged as number one under Heavenly Mountain's old ancestor. It was to the extent where not a single disciple from Immortal Academy had ever seen Elder Xian Ping before. Outside the multicolored cloud, Pang Feiyun looked at the undulating cloud, and his eyes constantly flickered with an indescribable brilliance. Suddenly, Pang Feiyun seemed to have made up his mind about something. A ray of light flickered in his sleeve, but it was hidden by his sleeve. Lu Ping, who was hidden by the multicolored cloud, was about to give some instructions to the Immortal Academy disciples, but he suddenly frowned and sneered. It seems that the lesson was not enough. Pang Feiyun had been indifferent and silent since he arrived here, so his actions just now were not noticed by the people present. However, Pang Feiyun seemed to have noticed that his secret technique had worked, so he turned his body slightly, as if he wanted to put one ear in the direction of the multicolored cloud, so that he could detect something through the secret technique. However, at this moment, the originally calm multicolored cloud suddenly fluctuated violently like a huge wave. Everyone, including Daoist Master Liu Shenyuan and Daoist Master Shen Fang, looked at the multicolored cloud behind them in surprise, but they heard Pang Feiyun let out a painful groan. When everyone looked at Pang Feiyun, they saw that his face was deathly pale, and there was a faint trace of blood seeping out of his left ear. Everyone immediately understood what was going on. Daoist Master Fei Hong sighed and took out a colorful bottle from the storage magic tool on his wrist. He poured out a crystal-clear pill from inside and handed it to Pang Feiyun to swallow. Daoist Master Shen Fang looked at the pill that Daoist Master Fei Hong took out and couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. He had obviously recognized the name of the pill, and this pill was obviously a quite famous and precious item. Daoist Master Liu Shenyuan gave Pang Feiyun a meaningful look, but he didn't say anything. Daoist Master Fei Hong smiled awkwardly and didn't say anything. Only Pang Feiyun closed his eyes to refine the medicinal power after swallowing the pill. Lu Ping glanced coldly outside the Cloudlight Five Elements robe, then turned around to look at the Immortal Academy's disciples with reverence on their faces. He smiled and said, "You are all the elites of the Immortal Academy in the past 10 years. This time, entering the Fist Valley is undoubtedly an opportunity. If you can gain something from the space, the sect will naturally not be stingy with your rewards. The door to the mid-stage blood condensation realm will no longer be a problem for you. Once you cross the threshold of the mid-stage blood condensation realm, it means that you have the qualifications to become a disciple of the Immortal Academy's core forging masters. This means that you will receive more cultivation resources, more pointers, more profound cultivation techniques, and more powerful spells. In the future, you will also be able to go further in the cultivation world." This was not Lu Ping boasting. With his current status, if he took care of these disciples a little, not to mention advancing to the mid-stage blood condensation realm, even the late-stage blood condensation realm would not be a problem. Many of the disciples were excited by Lu Ping's promises and words. They couldn't wait to enter the Fist Valley right now. Lu Ping glanced at the few disciples who were still calm, including Du Jialuo and Tian Yu, who had his cultivation sealed. He said calmly, "You don't have to be too happy. There are also great risks in the space. Remember, the most dangerous thing in the space is not the various dangers and the demonic beasts inside, but the cultivators from the various sects who entered with you." Looking at the solemn and thoughtful disciples in front of him, Lu Ping knew that they were naturally smart people who could stand out among hundreds of disciples in the past 10 years. They could naturally understand what he meant. Lu Ping waved his hand, and 18 jade slips appeared between the 18 disciples. Lu Ping gestured for everyone to pick up a jade slip, then he said, "These 18 jade slips record the map of the Fist Valley. Some areas with a higher concentration of spirit herbs are marked in the jade slips. There are also dozens of images of spirit herbs recorded at the bottom of the jade slips. Remember them all. Although these spirit herbs are 500-year and 1,000-year spirit herbs, they are extremely rare and precious compared to other spirit herbs. When you are harvesting spirit herbs in the space, you must prioritize harvesting these things." After everyone memorized the map and pictures of spiritual herbs in the jade slips, Tian Yu was the first to crush the jade slip in his hand. The other disciples were surprised at first, But they immediately understood what Lu Ping meant and crushed the jade slips in their hands. Lu Ping nodded in satisfaction. He then flipped his palm, and another 18 talismans appeared in his hand. He said, "These 18 talismans have two effects. One is that after you enter the space, as long as you are not more than 5 miles away from each other, the talismans will sense each other. It will make it easier for you to gather together and work together." The 18 disciples were overjoyed. They picked up the talismans that landed in front of them and hid them close to their bodies. However, Lu Ping continued, "The second effect of these talismans is protection. I believe they can withstand a blow from a third-layer blood condensation cultivator without shattering. Originally, I would have given you guys better talismans. However, this space is very strange. Once the aura of a cultivator above the third layer of the blood condensation realm leaks out, the space around that cultivator will shatter. I don't need to say more about the result." After Lu Ping finished speaking, all the disciples trembled. Lu Ping's gaze turned to Tian Yu. Tian Yu had sealed his cultivation, but Lu Ping knew that Tian Yu wasn't good at fighting. If he broke through the seal in a dangerous situation, only death would await Tian Yu. Since Lu Ping already had the intention to accept disciples, he naturally wouldn't allow any accidents to happen to them. However, the rare look of determination on Tian Yu's face surprised Lu Ping. According to Lu Ping's knowledge, although Tian Yu was quite talented in the field of pill refinement, he was a relatively timid person. Originally, Lu Ping thought that the Immortal Academy sent him because they couldn't gather 18 blood condensation disciples. Now, it seemed like Tian Yu took the initiative to send him. Chapter 709. Lu Ping knew that Yingshan Immortal Academy's foundation was shallow. The cultivation of the 18 disciples was uneven and they didn't have much experience. If they entered the space now, it would be easy for others to take advantage of them. Thus, he had no choice but to rack his brains and leave behind more methods to prevent his own disciples from suffering heavy losses. In fact, Lu Ping also knew that this was the reason why Tianshan Laozu wanted him to come here. Lu Ping didn't care about the Academy's matters for the past 10 years. Tianshan Laozu wanted him to worry about the Academy. At the same time, he wanted to establish his prestige among the many disciples of Yingshan Immortal Academy. After receiving the spiritual talisman, the disciples saw that Lu Ping didn't remove the rainbow mist around them. They were overjoyed. Could it be that this elder Xian Ping was going to give them more treasures? Looking at the excited disciples around him, Tian Yu couldn't help but twitch his mouth. This was nothing. It couldn't even be compared to a single hair in Daoist Xian Ping's 9 oxen. If they knew that this person in front of them was known as the boy of many treasures, who knew how shocked they would be. As expected, Lu Ping still had more methods to give out. He took out a spirit beast bag and formed a few hand seals towards the sealed spirit beast bag. The originally sealed spirit beast bag was immediately opened. A buzzing sound rang out, and under the expectant gazes of Tian Yu and Tian Yu's astonished gazes, 18 fist-sized demonic wasps flew out from the spirit beast pouch. Their transparent wings flapped rapidly, and they gave off an aura that struck fear into the hearts of all the disciples. These 18 demonic bees were all at the third layer of the core forging realm. Under Lu Ping's command, the 18 demonic bees landed on the shoulders of the disciples under the fearful gazes of the disciples. Lu Ping naturally wouldn't reveal the name of the amethyst wasps. He only said, "These are demon soldiers that I've specially trained. Each of these 18 wasps has a cultivation of the third layer of the blood condensation realm. Although the true cultivation of a demon soldier is far weaker than human or demonic beast cultivators of the same cultivation realm, they will still be of great help to you. Furthermore, these wasps have a special ability to sense spiritual herbs and flowers. When the time comes, you will have a map to refer to and the wasps to guide you. I believe that your harvest will not be inferior to the other two sect." Demon soldiers. The disciples carefully looked at the amethyst wasps on their shoulders, and their hearts surged with joy. Previously, when the Immortal Academy disciples saw that the other two sects were all at the third layer of the blood condensation realm, they were still a little apprehensive. But now, when they saw the third layer demonic bees on their shoulders, their previous apprehension was swept away. Because Wasp Queen Zilan had advanced to the core forging realm, the quality of the amethyst wasps in Lu Ping's hands had also greatly improved. More than a third of the thousands of amethyst wasps had advanced to the blood condensation realm. Although 3 of these amethyst wasps might not be as strong as a human or demonic beast cultivator of the same cultivation realm, it was already a great help to the Immortal Academy disciples. It was even more beneficial than giving them a high-grade magic tool. Actually, Lu Ping wanted to give them more, so that every cultivator could control a batch of amethyst wasps. However, these wasps were Zilan's subordinates, and Zilan had recognized Lu Ping as her master. Even if Lu Ping wanted to give them the amethyst wasps, these disciples would not be able to control them with their spiritual will. It was better to give each of them 1 amethyst wasps. This way, under Zilan's orders, these disciples would be able to control the amethyst wasps with their own spiritual will. What's more, once the amethyst wasps were given to a disciple, if that disciple died and the amethyst wasps were obtained by others, the news of Yingshan Immortal Academy possessing the amethyst wasps would be exposed. Then, the newly established Immortal Academy would immediately be suppressed by the various powers, and the Immortal Academy might even vanish into thin air. Moreover, the amethyst wasps could not be separated from the queen bee for too long. If they were separated for too long, the amethyst wasps would either dissipate on their own, or a new queen bee would be born. No matter which scenario it was, Lu Ping was not willing to see it happen. However, if a cultivator only had 1 amethyst wasp, then there was no need to worry. Putting aside the fact that the amethyst wasps had disappeared from the cultivation world for so many years, it was doubtful that anyone would recognize them. Moreover, Lu Ping had also placed a restriction on these 18 amethyst wasps through Zilan. Once the aura of the cultivator they followed dissipated, they would also die. Lu Ping glanced at Du Jialuo, and a trace of hesitation could be seen in his eyes. Following which, he seemed to have made up his mind. He raised his head and said, "The other disciples can leave for now. Only a few disciples at the 3rd level of the blood condensation realm can stay. I have some instructions here." The other disciples looked at the only 4 disciples at the 3rd level of the blood condensation realm from the Immortal Academy with looks of envy. Elder Xian Ping naturally had instructions for the few disciples with the highest cultivation to stay behind. Perhaps, these people might even receive some benefits from Elder Xian Ping. However, they couldn't blame others for this. Who asked them to be weaker than Elder Xian Ping? Lu Ping saw 3 of the disciples looking smug. They all looked at Lu Ping with bright eyes, as if waiting for him to give them other instructions. Lu Ping smiled, then turned to Tian Yu and asked, "Have you thought it through? You are not good at fighting. Now that your cultivation has been sealed, if you break the seal and use magic power beyond the 3rd level of the blood condensation realm, you will die for sure." Tian Yu hesitated for a moment when he heard Lu Ping's words, but his eyes regained clarity in an instant. He nodded at Lu Ping and said, "Don't worry, Uncle Master. Since disciple has already made up his mind, then life and death are up to fate." Lu Ping smiled and didn't say anything else. However, there was a trace of admiration in his eyes for Tian Yu. Lu Ping looked at the 4 people in front of him and took out 4 more jade slips from his storage magic tool. He said, "The map I gave you earlier is actually not complete. There are 4 other maps in these 4 jade slips. They might record areas that the cultivators who entered before the space opened. There might be a large number of higher quality spiritual herbs in these areas." Tian Yu's eyes lit up. He was a true alchemist. Although Lu Ping's words were vague, for a grandmaster like Lu Ping to say higher quality spiritual herbs, it meant that the spiritual herbs growing in these unknown areas were only 3,000 years old. Once you encounter these spiritual herbs, you don't have to hesitate. Just collect them as much as you want. However, there are more than 20 spiritual herbs that you have to pay special attention to. If you encounter these spiritual herbs, you have to collect them carefully and store them in a special spirit sealing jade box. Lu Ping naturally wouldn't just tell them about the rare 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs needed to refine the spirit forging pill. Instead, he arranged them in a random order with the other rare 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs. This way, even if someone saw these spiritual herbs, they wouldn't be able to associate them with the spirit forging pill. Lu Ping handed a few spirit sealing boxes made of jade crystals to the disciples and took out 4 small spirit beast pouches. The 4 of them didn't feel numb when they saw Lu Ping's endless methods. Instead, they were pleasantly surprised. Being able to see Elder Shen Ping today was enough for them to hold their heads high in front of everyone even if they didn't go to the Fist Valley. Lu Ping handed the 4 spirit beast bags to the 4 of them and passed a set of techniques to them. Then, he said, each of these 4 storage bags contains 50 demonic bees at the late stage of the blood refining realm. After you use the techniques I just passed to you, you can use these demonic bees to form the demon soldier formation. With this demon soldier formation, you will at least have the strength of a blood condensation realm cultivator. Lu Ping looked at the 4 of them and said, however, I don't want you to use this demon soldier formation to fight with others. I've already set up some things in the spirit beast bags. Whenever you find a patch of spiritual grass, you must first release these demonic bees to collect nectar. At the same time, these demonic bees can also help you patrol and warn you. After that, you can start collecting the spiritual grass. Do you understand? Seeing the 4 of them nodding, Lu Ping said, if the 4 of you return, I will reward each of you with half a catty of nectar brewed by the demonic bees. At the same time, prepare to go into seclusion and break through to the late stage of the blood condensation realm. Lu Ping's words stunned the 4 of them at first. Then, they became overjoyed. The meaning behind Lu Ping's words couldn't be clearer. The other 3 third-level blood condensation disciples were excited because Lu Ping was going to help them advance to the mid-stage of the blood condensation realm, but Tianyu was excited because of the half a catty of nectar. Tianyu naturally knew about the demonic bees Lu Ping took out. Those were one of Daoist Master Shen Ping's trump cards, the amethyst bees that had been extinct in the cultivation world for a long time. Half a catty of nectar brewed by the amethyst bees. If news of this got out, any alchemist or even grandmaster alchemist would go crazy. With half a catty of amethyst bee nectar in hand, how many cultivation resources that could help them advance to the late stage of the blood condensation realm couldn't be bought? Not to mention, the nectar itself was an essential ingredient for many kinds of pills. After the 4 of them memorized the map Lu Ping gave them and the method to control the amethyst bees, they crushed the jade slips again. Lu Ping nodded and said solemnly, that's all. After you enter the space, just be careful. Remember what I said today and don't leak it. Otherwise, it will bring trouble to the Immortal Academy, and even your lives will be in danger. Lu Ping didn't wait for the others to reply. He stretched out his hand and grasped it. The surrounding 5-colored clouds quickly shrunk into Lu Ping's hand. A moment later, the clouds turned into a faintly discernible 5-colored robe. Lu Ping clenched his fist and the clothes disappeared from his hand. At the same time, the crowd looked around and saw the Shanyu sect and Jiyu clan cultivators, as well as enlightened Master Liu Shenyuan and the others, looking at Lu Ping and the 4 third-layer blood condensation realm cultivators. Lu Ping smiled and said, my apologies, I have something to tell the disciples. I've delayed everyone's time. Jiyu Hun smiled and said, it's fine. The space will be open for a month anyway, so what's a little delay? But seeing how Daoist Shen Ping gave us such detailed instructions, you seem to be very familiar with the Fist Valley space. Could it be that Daoist Shen Ping already has some understanding of the Fist Valley space? Lu Ping could be considered an iron-faced person in the cultivation world who wouldn't blush when he lied. He chuckled and said, Daoist Jiyu must be joking. I've never heard of this Fist Valley space before, but I've intentionally collected some books about the Ying Tian sect in Hebei. Among them, there were many descriptions of the secret realms left behind by the Ying Tian sect. I believe that the layout of the Ying Tian sect in the Fist Valley space might be similar, so I gave some instructions to my disciples. Chapter 710. The moment Du Jialuo and the rest of the first and second level blood condensation realm disciples stepped out of the 5-colored cloud, they suddenly felt that the cloud they were walking in was slightly thicker than before. They couldn't even take a step out of the 5-colored cloud. At that moment, the third-level blood condensation realm wasp that had already crawled into Du Jialuo's sleeve suddenly moved. Du Jialuo was surprised. Just as he was about to lift up his sleeve to check, a fat person suddenly appeared out of thin air. Du Jialuo jumped in fright. He was about to shout when he saw the person in front of him put his index finger in front of his mouth and made a shushing gesture. Only then did Du Jialuo realize that the person in front of him was Perfected Dabao. Just as Du Jialuo was about to ask in a low voice, he saw Perfected Dabao's body suddenly emit a khaki-colored smoke. When the smoke dissipated, a fat mouse could be seen. It had shrunk itself into a meatball that was only half a foot long and rolled into Du Jialuo's sleeve. Although Du Jialuo was puzzled, he immediately pretended as if nothing had happened. He took another step forward and followed the other cultivators out of the range of the 5-elemental cloud robe. However, what shocked Du Jialuo was that after Perfected Dabao transformed into his original form and entered his sleeve, his newly formed divine sense discovered that Perfected Dabao's current cultivation was only at the 3rd level of the blood condensation realm. How was this possible? Although Du Jialuo was shocked, he didn't dare to show it on his face. It was easy to completely seal an early-stage core forging cultivator's cultivation, and it wasn't difficult to seal it to the late stage of the blood condensation realm either. However, to seal a cultivator's cultivation from the early-stage core forging realm to the early stage of the blood condensation realm, Du Jialuo didn't know how to seal a cultivator's cultivation all the way from the early-stage core forging realm to the early stage of the blood condensation realm. Although Du Jialuo had read many books in the cultivation world with Lu Ping's support, he didn't know how to seal a cultivator's cultivation all the way to the early stage of the blood condensation realm. Perhaps only a brilliant person like Elder Xian Ping could have such shocking methods, right? Du Jialuo quickly recollected his thoughts. At that moment, the 5 late-stage core forging realm cultivators from the 3 sects were going to work together to open up the Fist Valley. Every 300 years, the collapsed space of the Fist Valley would weaken once. At this time, 6 late-stage core forging realm cultivators would work together to open a space tunnel in 6 different directions. Amidst a series of teeth-aching noises, the originally crisscrossing spatial cracks were temporarily cleared. Lu Ping skillfully controlled the autumn dew sword to stab into the 2 nodes of the formation far away from each other. A steady stream of vigorous Zhen Yuan was injected into the formation, maintaining the entire spatial passage. Perfected Zhen Ming turned around and said solemnly, "The tunnel has been opened. Disciples from all sects, quickly enter the space of the Fist Valley. 3 months later, we will open the tunnel again for 1 day. If you can't come out by then, the space of the tunnel will collapse again. If you want to come out, you will have to wait for 300 years. No one was amused by Perfected Zhen Ming's joke. 60 early-stage blood condensation realm cultivators from all sects entered in a single file, passed through the light screen of the tunnel, and disappeared. After all the disciples entered the space, Jiyu Hun from the Jiyu family bid farewell to everyone and left first, leaving only Perfected Zhen Ming and Master Jiyu Ju to guard the space tunnel. The space would open in 3 months, so there was no need for everyone to stay here. After a while, Pang Feiyun also found an excuse to leave. Previously, he tried to use a rare treasure to spy on Lu Ping's instructions to the Celestial Academy disciples, but he was stopped by the spirit-nurturing treasure, the Cloud Radiance 5 Elements robe. Then, he suffered a loss from Lu Ping, and his divine sense was almost scattered by Lu Ping. Now, he was in a hurry to go back and recover from his injuries. Perfected Liu Shenyuan looked back at Lu Ping and said, "Don't tell me you're going to leave too?" Lu Ping was stunned. He did want to leave just now, but after hearing Perfected Liu Xuanyuan's words, he was too embarrassed to just leave. Perfected Liu Shenyuan chuckled and said, "Senior brother, I'm the Mountain Elder of the Celestial Academy now. I can't say that I have a myriad of affairs to attend to every day, but I'm still quite busy. In that case, I'll have to trouble Junior Brother Lu and Junior Brother Shen Fang to look after me again." Lu Ping nodded helplessly, while Perfected Shen Fang was secretly delighted. In fact, this time, Perfected Liu Shenyuan had received Perfected Shen Fang's request, hoping that he could ask Lu Ping for some advice on alchemy. Although Perfected Shen Fang was also an alchemy master, compared to an alchemy grandmaster like Lu Ping, the gap between them could not be calculated. It was extremely rare to receive guidance from an alchemy grandmaster. Perfected Shen Fang was a well-deserved alchemy genius among the 3rd-generation disciples of Zhenling. It was only because of a monstrous genius like Lu Ping that he had been living in a state of desperation to catch up with Lu Ping, only to be left further and further behind. After coming to Yingshan Immortal Academy this time, especially when he saw Lu Ping, perfected Xianfang suddenly realized that although he had always regarded Lu Ping as a competitor, the latter did not seem to care about him at all. Or it could be said that he did not even have the qualifications to be his competitor. Although perfected Xianfang was depressed, he seemed to have put down a heavy burden in his heart. Hence, he had the intention to ask Lu Ping for advice. At this moment, perfected Xianfang did not have the slightest bit of jealousy or other thoughts. He only had the pursuit and passion for alchemy. At this time, perfected Xianfang realized that perhaps he had subconsciously given up the idea of competing with Lu Ping, just like how he took care of Tianyu in the Pill Pavilion. Although it was because of Tianyu's own alchemy talent, perfected Xianfang seemed to intentionally or unintentionally want to reveal the intention of reconciliation to Lu Ping through Tianyu. It was just that he was also a genius of Zhenling after all. He had his own pride. Even though he knew that it would be difficult for him to reach the height of Lu Ping in this life, it was difficult for him to give up the competitive spirit in his heart. Over time, it became a demon that restricted the improvement of his alchemy skills. In fact, as one of the top alchemy masters of Zhenling, as long as perfected Xianfang was willing, whether it was Tianlu Laozu or Tianqin Laozu, these two alchemy grandmasters would naturally give him pointers on alchemy. In fact, it was precisely because perfected Xianfang's alchemy skills had reached a bottleneck that when he asked Tianlu Laozu for advice on how to break through, Tianlu Laozu was silent for a long time and told him to go back first before telling him the method. Unexpectedly, a few days later, the sect sent him news that they wanted to transfer him to the Central Plains. Although perfected Xianfang did not understand, he did not disobey the sect's order. It was just that at that time, Immortal Academy had just been built and there were many things waiting to be done. Tianshan Laozu's requirements for alchemy masters were very urgent, but it just so happened that the alchemy grandmaster Lu Ping was in seclusion. Therefore, perfected Xianfang did not have time to ask Tianlu Laozu for the method to break through the bottleneck before he came to the Central Plains. During the several years he spent in Yingshan Immortal Academy, although perfected Xianfang's alchemy skills did not improve, the success rate of alchemy that he had mastered had increased a lot. Moreover, his cultivation had also broken through to the middle stage of core forging. After Lu Ping came out of seclusion, when perfected Xianfang saw Lu Ping in front of the main hall of Immortal Academy, he finally understood the purpose of the sect transferring him to the Central Plains. It was to let him face Lu Ping and completely abandon the last trace of his demon. After understanding the cause and effect, perfected Xianfang completely let go of his previous obsession and hoped to communicate with Lu Ping. Therefore, he wanted to talk to Lu Ping alone through perfected Liu Shenyuan in the name of asking for advice on alchemy. Perfected Liu Shenyuan knew about the conflict between Lu Ping and perfected Xianfang. Although perfected Liu Shenyuan found this kind of trivial matter funny, perfected Xianfang was after all the alchemy grandmaster of the sect. In terms of status and identity, perfected Liu Shenyuan was even more happy to see him take the initiative to reconcile with Lu Ping, so he agreed. Therefore, the always honest perfected Liu Shenyuan actually played a scoundrel with Lu Ping. However, it seemed like the heavens also found perfected Xianfang interesting and wanted to play a joke on him. Just when Lu Ping agreed to stay behind with perfected Liu Shenyuan, Lu Ping looked up at the sky upstream of Ying River in surprise. When perfected Liu Shenyuan saw Lu Ping like this, he also looked up and saw a ray of light approaching from afar. When it got close, perfected Liu Shenyuan said in surprise, "It's perfected Li Nan. How did he get here?" Lu Ping recognized this perfected Li Nan. He was the guest cultivator at the 6th layer of core forging who did his best to protect a few Immortal Academy disciples from being killed by junior martial brother Wang. This guest cultivator could be considered as one of the first batch of cultivators to join Immortal Academy. In these years, he could be considered capable and experienced. In fact, Guo Tianshan, Laozu, and perfected Liu Shenyuan had long understood perfected Li Nan's purpose. His cultivation had been stuck at the peak of the 6th layer of core forging for many years. However, due to his status as a rogue cultivator and the flaws in his cultivation method, he was unable to break through to the late stage of core forging. The reason he joined Immortal Academy was to perfect his cultivation heritage and break through to the late stage of core forging. However, at that time, Immortal Academy had just been established and people's hearts were hard to predict. Guo Tianshan, Laozu, and the others naturally had to be on guard. How could they easily leak their family's heritage? However, in these 10 years, perfected Li Nan's reputation in Immortal Academy was quite good. Especially after the battle between perfected Shenping and the Jiyu clan, perfected Li Nan finally received the recognition of many cultivators in Immortal Academy. When perfected Li Nan descended, perfected Liu Shenyuan asked doubtfully, "Brother Li, how did you get here?" In Immortal Academy, only perfected masters of core forging who came from the North Sea under Tianshan Laozu knew about the Fist Valley space. The other core forging juniors would not tell perfected Li Nan about it. Therefore, there was only one possibility for perfected Li Nan to come here. Perfected Li Nan let out a breath and said, "Tianshan Laozu just sent a message saying that a guest from afar has arrived. He wants the two of you to return to Immortal Academy as soon as possible after the matter in the Fist Valley space is settled." Lu Ping and perfected Liu Shenyuan looked at each other in surprise. Guest from afar was a term used by Immortal Academy to refer to cultivators from their own sects in the North Sea. Guo Tianshan Laozu actually asked perfected Li Nan to send such a message. It could be seen that perfected Li Nan had passed Guo Tianshan Laozu's test. Lu Ping and perfected Liu Shenyuan smiled and cupped their hands at perfected Li Nan. They said, "Congratulations, Brother Li." Perfected Li Nan was stunned at first, but his face immediately revealed an ecstatic expression. He stammered, "You too, this. Perfected Liu Shenyuan patted perfected Li Nan's shoulder and said, "I'll have to trouble Brother Li and junior brother Shenfang to look after this place for the time being. Junior brother Shenping and I will return to the sect first." Chapter 711. Enlightened Master Liu Shenyuan was a little surprised, but Lu Ping looked at the woman in front of him in shock. Enlightened Master Shen Cai looked at Lu Ping's expression and found it funny. She said, "Junior Marshal Brother Lu, we haven't met for a few decades. Why are you so distant?" Lu Ping blushed and smiled embarrassedly. "I didn't expect it to be Senior Marshal Sister Qi who came from home. I haven't heard much news about Senior Marshal Sister Qi in the sect. But after seeing Senior Marshal Sister's cultivation, I finally understand." This time, Zhenling sent 5 core forging cultivators to Yingshan Immortal Academy. The one leading them was Enlightened Master Shen Cai, who was in front of Lu Ping. Lu Ping recognized this Enlightened Master Shen Cai and had a deep impression of her. She was Qi Zicai, one of the 18 generals of the North Sea before Enlightened Master Liu Shenyuan advanced to core forging. In fact, Lu Ping wasn't completely clueless about Qi Zicai's situation. She was a famous cultivator in the past, so Lu Ping had naturally asked about her recent situation. Back then, he heard that Qi Zicai had encountered a huge bottleneck in her breakthrough to the core forging realm. Even after Enlightened Master Liu Shenyuan and the others advanced to the core forging realm, she was still stuck at the peak of the blood condensation realm. Later on, he heard that she basically had no hope of advancing to core forging. Lu Ping felt that it was a pity for a period of time. Although Qi Zicai was a woman, she was very capable and experienced. She left a deep impression on Lu Ping. After Lu Ping spent most of his time traveling, he didn't hear any news about her. Today, he saw Qi Zicai again. Not only had she broken through to the core forging realm, she seemed to be the same as Liu Shenyuan. She was also a cultivator who had accumulated a lot of experience. In less than 100 years, she had risen from the late blood condensation realm to the 6th layer core forging realm. However, Lu Ping could feel from her aura that Enlightened Master Shen Cai's cultivation seemed to have just advanced and stabilized after a period of seclusion. Speaking of Zhenling sect's 3rd generation disciples, they could be roughly divided into 3 different age groups. The first stage consisted of Daoist Master Shen Tian, Daoist Master Shen Hui, Daoist Master Shen Ryu, Daoist Master Shen Hui, and other disciples of the 2nd generation of Zhenling. These disciples had already reached the 5th or 6th layer of core forging. As for the more outstanding disciples like Shentian Zhenren, they had already stepped into the late core forging stage and had begun to peak at the transcendent stage, preparing to advance to the transcendent stage. The second group consisted of disciples like Liu Shenyuan, Qi Xuanzai, Daoist Master Shen Shong, and Daoist Master Shen Lei. They had joined the second generation of Zhenling's disciples relatively late and had only cultivated for a short period of time. However, the more accomplished disciples had already advanced to the mid-core forging stage. The more outstanding disciples like Liu Shenyuan, Qi Xuanzai, and Daoist Master Shen Shong had already advanced to the sixth layer of core forging and were beginning to work towards the late core forging stage. The third group was the disciples represented by Lu Ping, Ji Shenxian, Yao Shenyong, Du Shenfeng, Chen Xuanlian, and the others. In this group of disciples, those who were successful had also advanced to the core forging realm, and the more outstanding ones were also in the mid-core forging realm. Of course, there was also an outlier like Lu Ping in this group of disciples. However, when the third generation of Zhenling's disciples discussed each other's cultivation realms, they often automatically ignored this person. This was not a person who could be judged by common sense, but rather a monster. There were also two late core forging stage cultivators who came with Daoist Master Shen Cai, and they were both acquaintances of Lu Ping. One was Liang Tianfeng Laozu's disciple, Daoist Master Zhong Shenbei, who had just advanced to the transcendent stage. The other was Daoist Master Shen Yu, who was rather taciturn back in the East Sea. These two Taoists were above Daoist Master Shen Cai in terms of cultivation and experience. However, this time, Zhenling had actually sent Daoist Master Shen Cai to replace Daoist Master Liu Shenyuan as the Mountain Elder. Thus, Daoist Master Shen Cai became the leader of the group of 5. The arrival of Daoist Master Shen Bei and Daoist Master Shen Yu was to increase the number of late core forging stage cultivators in Immortal Academy. This was also what Guo Tianshan Laozu had strongly requested of the sect after the battle between Lu Ping and the 3 heroes of the Jiyu clan. At the same time, there were also 2 mid-core forging stage cultivators. One was also an acquaintance of Lu Ping. It was Chen Lian's junior, Daoist Master Shen Dao. Lu Ping had a good impression of him. Back then, when Daoist Master Lu Hai led the demon clan to besiege Huangli Island, this Daoist Master Shen Dao happened to be present. At that time, he also played a great role in the battle. Later, when Yin Xuanchu's identity as a mixed human and demon was exposed, he also helped Yin Shenchu escape with Lu Ping and the others without hesitation. Of course, the reason why Daoist Master Shen Dao could come to Immortal Academy was also the result of Tianshan Laozu's strong request. The reason was very simple. Currently, Immortal Academy did not have a decent tool refiner, and this Daoist Master Shen Dao was one of the only 2 tool refiners in Zhenling's 3rd generation disciples, second only to Chen Lian. The remaining Daoist Master Shen Ting was someone Lu Ping did not know. After meeting her, Lu Ping found out that this Daoist Master Shen Teng was actually a talisman master of the Talisman Pavilion. However, she was not under Daoist Master Shen Ju, but the disciple of another talisman master. With the addition of these 5 people, Yingshan Immortal Academy's strength would undoubtedly rise to a higher level. Not to mention the addition of a tool refiner and a talisman master, the addition of Daoist Master Shen Bei and Daoist Master Shen Yu, these 2 late-stage core forging cultivators would also greatly increase the strength of the Immortal Academy's core forging cultivators. At the very least, after the incident with the Jiyu clan's 3 heroes, the experts of Immortal Academy would not be stretched too thin. It must be known that when Daoist Master Shen Bei advanced to the late stage of core forging, he used a high-grade Earth-ranked spirit object, and Daoist Master Shen Yu also smelted a mid-grade Earth-ranked dual-attribute spirit object. Although the quality of the smelted spirit object was only one aspect of a cultivator's strength, at the very least, Daoist Master Shen Bei and Daoist Master Shen Yu were not weaklings among cultivators of the same level. After the 5 people came to Immortal Academy, they quickly joined and established their reputation among the many disciples, establishing their own positions, especially Daoist Master Shen Cai. Because she wanted to take over Daoist Master Liu Xuanyuan's position as Mountain Elder, she had to follow Daoist Master Liu Shenyuan and familiarize herself with everything in Immortal Academy. After a year, Daoist Master Liu Shenyuan would return to the North Sea and prepare to advance to the late stage of core forging. After the 5 newcomers were led by Daoist Master Liu Shenyuan to familiarize themselves with the situation in Immortal Academy, Lu Ping turned to Guotianshan Laozu and said with a smile, "Martial uncle, it seems that the momentum of the sect's development these years is still good. Otherwise, according to the information that senior brother Shentian brought back about the North Sea's cultivation world, although our sect still has the advantage in the North Sea, it would not be easy to easily transfer 2 late-stage core forging cultivators, a master refiner, and a talisman master." Guotianshan Laozu smiled and said, "The harvest from Yingtian Dojo has deepened the foundation of the sects in the North Sea. Although the sects in the North Sea have developed with the treasures obtained from Yingtian Dojo, our sect has gained the most, so our development is naturally faster. However, the most important reason why the sect is so generous this time is because of the East Sea." East Sea. Lu Ping's eyes lit up and said, "Did something go wrong in the Crystal Palace?" Guotianshan Laozu nodded, but he did not look relaxed. Instead, he looked a little solemn. He said, "Senior brother Tienkang sent news from Jingzhe Island that the conflict between the Carefree sect and the Crystal Palace is getting more and more intense. As for the other 4 large sects in the East Sea, except for Skyrend who is confronting the Kuan Fish clan and has no time to deal with other things, the other 3 sects are more or less secretly helping the Carefree sect." Lu Ping nodded and said in a serious voice, "That's how it should be. After all, the Crystal Palace has been the overlord of the East Sea for too long. Now that someone is taking the lead to fight against the Crystal Palace, it's natural for the other 3 sects to secretly help the Carefree sect." Guotianshan agreed with Lu Ping's words and continued, "If it was only this matter, it would not have caused the Crystal Palace to be so badly battered. More importantly, the Crystal Palace's operation to invade the Middle Earth this time has failed again. The Heavenly Moon sect, together with a few sects in the east coast of the Middle Earth, suddenly attacked and destroyed the few strongholds that the Crystal Palace had established along the coast in one fell swoop. This drove the Crystal Palace's power from the land back to the sea. Now, the Crystal Palace's power has mostly shrunk to a few islands along the coast and barely managed to gain a foothold." Tianshan Laozu paused for a while and continued, "According to the news from Martial Uncle Tienkang, the Avalon of 5 Elements, one of the 5 holy lands of the Middle Earth, seems to be behind this sudden attack by the Heavenly Moon sect." Although Lu Ping was quite shocked when he heard this news, he felt that it was inevitable. If it was just the Heavenly Moon sect alone, even though it was also a large sect, how could it resist the Crystal Palace for so many years, causing the Crystal Palace to be unable to gain a foothold in the Middle Earth? However, now that he heard that the game between the Avalon of 5 Elements and the Crystal Palace was actually turning from the dark to the light, if this news were to spread, the entire cultivation world would probably immediately welcome a shock. There was a faint anticipation in Lu Ping's heart. If these 2 large sects were to clash head-on, what kind of shocking scene would that be? Seeing that Lu Ping's expression had suddenly become excited, Guotianshan Laozu naturally knew what Lu Ping was planning. Thus, he rudely interrupted Lu Ping's thoughts and said, "In a few days, your martial uncle Tianfeng and martial uncle Tiancheng will also arrive at the Celestial Academy. At that time, there will be a chaotic battle in Hebei. You are the #1 expert below the Dharma adepts of the Celestial Academy. At that time, there will definitely be many matters that require you to represent the Celestial Academy. After the Fist Valley space ends, you will first represent the Celestial Academy to the spiritual martial sect to participate in the gathering of the Hebei cultivation world to encircle and annihilate Mara. Martial Uncle Tianfeng and Martial Uncle Tiancheng are also coming." Lu Ping's expression turned cold. His intuition told him that this matter was not as simple as it seemed. Thus, he said, "Are the 2 martial uncles here in secret?" Guotianshan Laozu looked deeply at Lu Ping and said, "The news that the 2 of them have broken through to the Dharma stage has not yet been leaked." Guotianshan Laozu thought for a while and seemed to want to explain the matter more thoroughly. Thus, he continued, "After the destruction of the Ying Tian sect, the spiritual martial sect is the most powerful sect in Hebei. This sect already has the strength of a large sect. All they need is the recognition of the 5 great holy lands to officially enter the threshold of a large sect." Lu Ping took a deep breath and said, I know what to do. Chapter 712. 4,000 years ago, the Azure Sea sect suddenly split into two sects, the Azure Sea sect and the Azure Waves sect. The previous huge sect suddenly collapsed, which greatly shocked the cultivation world of the North Sea. From then on, Zhenling passed down a rule. Apart from Zhenling's sect's encampment and dojo, any other Zhenling cultivators who opened up cave abodes, dojo, or side courtyards in other regions would have to rotate after 10 years. The purpose of this rule was to prevent the high-ranking cultivators from the sect from having the idea of breaking out after establishing their own sects for too long. Back then, Tian Shui Laozu guarded Huanyu Island. Later, it was Tian Kang Laozu, and now, it was Jiang Tianlin Laozu. After Lu Ping opened up Huangli Island, Jiang Tianlin Laozu was the first to guard it, which was later replaced by Tian Qin Laozu. As for the Jingzhe Island in the East Sea, after Tian Xiong Laozu became a grand cultivator and returned to Tianling Mountain to guard it, it was left empty for a period of time. After Jiang Tianlin Laozu returned to the North Sea from Ying Mountain Range to replace Tian Kang Laozu in guarding Huanyu Island, Tian Kang Laozu went to the East Sea to guard Jingzhe Island. After Lu Ping opened up Huangli Island, although he was not considered a true high-ranking cultivator at that time, he now had the right. Luckily, Lu Ping had always been a hands-off manager, handing Huangli Island to Hu Lili to manage. In addition, Jiang Tianlin Laozu and Tian Qin Laozu guarded the island. Liu Tianling Laozu's authority as the sect leader was growing day by day. Therefore, although there had always been people in the sect who were jealous of the large cultivation resources on Huangli Island, they had always tried to get their hands on the benefits of Huangli Island under the name of Zhenling's tradition of rotating guards. They had never succeeded. Yingshan Immortal Academy was naturally no exception. Logically speaking, this time Guo Tianshan Laozu also needed to be rotated. However, this place was after all far away from the North Sea, and it was still in its early stages. In addition, they needed to hide the fact that Celestial Academy was Zhenling's backing. Dharma adepts were such a huge target. Once people found out that Celestial Academy's Dharma adept had suddenly been replaced by someone else, it would naturally raise the suspicions of other powers. Therefore, Guo Tianshan Laozu's position could not be changed, but Spiritual Master Liu Xuanyuan's position as Mountain Elder had to be changed. Just Guo Tianshan Laozu's identity as a direct disciple meant that even if Spiritual Master Liu Shenyuan did not take up the position of Mountain Elder, he could not stay in Celestial Academy for long. Even though the change of Celestial Academy's Mountain Elder would also attract the attention of other powers, compared to replacing Tianshan Laozu, this target was much smaller. Moreover, Spiritual Master Liu Shenyuan was not too far away from the peak of the 6th level of core forging. He could completely use the excuse of breaking through to the late stage of core forging to resign from his position as Mountain Elder. This time, Tianfeng Laozu and Tiancheng Laozu had secretly sneaked into Central Plains. Although Lu Ping had already guessed some things from Tianshan Laozu's words, in reality, the other meaning of the two Laozu's arrival was also to supplement the Zhenling's rotating inheritance. Since it could not be rotated, then it was simply a situation of mutual restraint. Even though everyone was well aware of this was, after all, the tradition of Zhenling, and no one could say anything about it. Several days later, in the cave under the cliff at the back of the Immortal Academy, the ultra-long-distance teleportation array lit up once again. Lu Ping accompanied Tianshan Laozu outside the stone room to welcome the arrival of the two Laozu. After the destruction of the Ying Tian sect, no more large sects appeared in the northern part of the Yulon River. Without the suppression of the Ying Tian sect, many of the medium-sized sects in this region began to develop with all their might, intending to raise their own sects into large powers, obtain the recognition of the 5 great cultivation holy lands of the Central Plains, and rule over a region of the Central Plains. However, in the past 4,000 years, the various powers in the Hebei cultivation world had fought over each other. Every time a sect rose to prominence, they would be suppressed by the other sects, forming a situation of mutual restraint. In the end, no sect was able to successfully develop into a large power. This time, it was the Spirit Martial sect's turn to have a chance. The Spirit Martial sect had been hiding their strength and biding their time for hundreds of years. They had always kept a low profile in the herbae cultivation world and secretly accumulated their strength. After nearly 1,000 years of hard work, the spirit martial sect finally possessed the strength of a large sect. Even so, the Laozu of the spirit martial sect still decided to keep a low profile. Although the spirit martial sect already possessed the strength of a large power, once the various medium-sized powers of the herbae cultivation world joined forces, the spirit martial sect would still be suppressed. Therefore, the Laozu of the spirit martial sect decided to continue to endure. They would either wait for the sect's strength to grow to the point where the other sects were unable to stop them, or wait for a suitable opportunity to quickly obtain the recognition of the 5 great holy lands and never establish their position as a large sect. And it just so happened that at this time, the herbae cultivation world had become the first stop for the Asura and the demonic cultivators to wreak havoc, opening the prelude to the great calamity of the cultivation world. For the spirit martial sect, this was an opportunity that they had no choice but to fight for, no matter good or bad. The entire herbae cultivation world had been harassed by Mara. All the sects had suffered heavy losses from Mara's attacks, and the spirit martial sect was no exception. However, when the spirit martial sect faced the attack of Mara's army, in order to reduce the sect's losses, they had no choice but to display their full strength in front of the herbae cultivation world. 2 grand adepts, 3 mid-Dharma adepts, and 6 early Dharma adept. The 11 Dharma adepts of Laozu had shaken the entire cultivation world. The spirit martial sect had hidden themselves so deeply. With the sect's protective array and the powerful strength of the 11 Dharma Laozu, although the spirit martial sect had suffered a large group of asuras and demonic cultivators, their losses were the least in the entire herbae cultivation world. Among the 11 Dharma adepts, Laozu had not fallen. On the other hand, almost all of the other mid-sized forces had Dharma adepts who had been injured or killed by Mara's rampage. Among them, the Jiyu family was one of the ones who had suffered the most. The Jiyu family originally had 3 mid-Dharma Laozu and 5 early Dharma adepts. They were considered above average among the mid-sized forces in the herbae cultivation world. However, during Mara's attack, 1 early Dharma adept had fallen, and another early Dharma adept had been seriously injured, almost losing any chance of improving his cultivation. Another mid-Dharma adept had suffered light injuries and would need a few years or even longer to recuperate. This kind of loss was considered a serious blow to the Jiyu family. Fortunately, the Jiyu family had managed to win over Changhe Laozu, who had been destroyed, and the remaining Inghe sect adepts to join them. This could be considered to have slightly recovered. However, compared to the spirit martial sect, this little bit of strength was simply incomparable. For a time, the entire herbae cultivation world was surging. Since the spirit martial sect had already revealed their strength, they decided not to hide it anymore. They actively began to send cultivators to the 5 holy lands, seeking the status of a large sect. As for the other sects and forces, while they were licking the wounds caused by Mara's rampage, they were also secretly forming alliances, preparing to snipe the rise of the spirit martial sect. For a time, the entire North Sea cultivation world was strangely quiet. However, the high-level cultivators of the various sects knew that this was just the last calm before the storm. Tianshan Laozu explained the situation of the entire herbae cultivation world to Tianfeng Laozu and Tiancheng Laozu in the rocky cave. Lu Ping sat at the side and listened. After Liang Tianfeng Laozu finished listening, he nodded and said, "The Immortal Academy is of great importance to our sect. Sooner or later, our sect will be exposed to the cultivation world of the Middle Earth and clash with the local forces. Instead of facing the suppression of the entire herbae cultivation world led by the spirit martial sect, it would be better to participate in the game of all parties and help the Jiyu family and other forces to join forces to suppress the spirit martial sect, maintaining the situation of the entire herbae cultivation world fighting separately and restraining each other." Chu Tiancheng Laozu also agreed, "That's right. In this way, with the support of our sect, the Immortal Academy can steadily rise and completely stabilize its foundation in the herbae cultivation world. When the time comes, our sect will enter the Middle Earth cultivation world in one go. At that time, even if the herbae cultivation world wants to stop us, it will be too late." Old ancestor Guo Tianshan nodded his head and said, "Previously, when the Jiyu family probed us, although we could be considered to have submitted, it also showed that the situation of the Jiyu family and the other medium-sized forces who wanted to fight against the spirit martial force was not very good. Even the Yingshan Immortal Academy and the Mountain Universe sect, which could barely be considered small sects, had to join the alliance to fight against the spirit martial force. This meant that the spirit martial force's allies were not weaker than their enemies, and this was our chance. As long as we took this opportunity to muddy the waters even more, it would be best if both sides suffered heavy losses, and only then would we be able to fight for more space for the Immortal Academy to grow." Liang Tianfeng Laozu pondered for a moment and said, "Although this is an opportunity, there is still a risk. Right now, the Immortal Academy is trying to find a way to preserve its strength while not letting the other sects see that we have ulterior motives." Chu Tiancheng Laozu said nonchalantly, "The Immortal Academy is just an unranked force right now. Even if we have some ulterior motives, they won't pay attention to us." Guo Tianshan Laozu thought for a moment and said, "It's best if the Immortal Academy has a Dharma cultivator in charge, but I have to participate in this matter. Otherwise, it will definitely arouse the suspicion of the Jiyu family. Senior Liang, Junior Chu, who do you think will stay at home?" When Chu Tiancheng Laozu heard this, he hurriedly said, "It's not easy to come out. Who wants to stay behind?" "Senior Liang, you can just stay in the Immortal Academy." Perfected Liang Shenfeng smiled and said, "The operation this time has to be done in the light and in the dark. The one in the light is junior brother Guo, and neither of us can replace him. The one in the dark focuses on sneak attacks and hiding our identities. After junior brother Shenyin dies, who else in the sect can compare to me?" This, Chu Tiancheng Laozu was dumbfounded, but he could not find a reason to refute. He could only slap his thigh and say, "What bad luck." Lu Ping looked on from the side and found it funny. Unexpectedly, Chu Tiancheng Laozu glared at him and scolded, "What are you laughing at? I heard from Senior Jiang that you have already gathered enough ingredients to make the spirit forging pill. Have you made the spirit forging pill now?" Lu Ping didn't want to bring trouble to himself, so he quickly said, "I've gathered enough spirit herbs to make 2 cauldrons of spirit forging pellets. However, the concoction process for the spirit forging pellets is no small matter, so I haven't started the process yet." Chapter 713. Lu Ping looked at Tiancheng Laozu and Tianfeng Laozu in confusion and asked, "Seniors, now that the recipe for the spirit forging pill has been gathered, could it be that with our sect's strength, we are still unable to gather all the herbs needed to refine the spirit forging pill? As for the 1,000 Wonder Dew, I believe that with our sect's tens of thousands of years of heritage, we should have at least a few drop." The spirit forging pill itself could only be considered a top-notch half-step Dharma elixir. Although the difficulty of refining it was no lower than that of a Dharma elixir, Junling now had Tianlu Laozu and Tianqin Laozu, 2 Dharma alchemists, as well as the precious cauldron that Jiang Tianlin Laozu had obtained from the Yingtian training hall. Refining such an elixir was a piece of cake. When Tiancheng Laozu and Tianfeng Laozu heard that Lu Ping could actually gather enough herbs for 2 cauldrons of the spirit forging pill, they looked at each other in surprise. Not to mention the rare 3,000-year-old herbs, to be able to gather all the herbs needed for 2 cauldrons of the spirit forging pill, didn't that mean that Lu Ping had at least 2 drops of the 1,000 Wonder Dew in his hands? Although the spirit forging pill was a half-step Dharma elixir, the few 3,000-year-old herbs used to refine it were rather precious. Junling had only managed to gather enough herbs for 5 cauldrons of the spirit forging pill, but Lu Ping could gather 2 cauldrons of the 1,000 Wonder Dew himself. Tianfeng Laozu suppressed the shock in his heart and handed a jade bottle to Lu Ping. "Take a look at the contents of the bottle first." Lu Ping took the jade bottle with a puzzled look. After opening the bottle, a fragrant scent instantly filled the entire stone room. Lu Ping, who had a good understanding of the spirit forging pill, naturally knew that this was the pill fragrance emitted by the spirit forging pill. It seemed that the sect had already refined the spirit forging pill, but why did Tianfeng Laozu want him to take a look first? Doubts flashed across Lu Ping's mind. Then, he exclaimed in surprise. He gently flipped the jade bottle over and a purple pellet appeared in his palm. He held it in front of his eyes and carefully observed it for a moment. Then, a bluish-purple true essence emerged from his palm and wrapped around the pellet. After a short while, the Zhen Yuan in Lu Ping's hand dissipated, and the pill returned to Daoist Tianfeng in the jade essence bottle. "How is it?" Tianfeng Laozu asked Lu Ping as he took the jade essence bottle. Lu Ping hesitated for a moment before saying, "Who made this pill?" From the way it was refined, there was nothing wrong with it. How come the medicinal effect of the spirit forging pill is only 70% that of a real spirit forging pill? Tianfeng Laozu nodded his head and said, "The pill you just saw was refined by Master Fornax. Moreover, he used the mountain and river treasured cauldron that Junior Tianlin obtained from the Ying Tian dojo. Regardless of whether it was Master Fornax or Junior Tianqin, they used a top-grade cauldron or a magic treasure cauldron. Although the success rate of the spirit forging pill is different, the medicinal effect is the same. It is only 70% of the 8 spirit forging pills that you obtained from Fei Ling Mountain. With 2 Grandmasters Laozu working together, the reason why the spirit forging pill's medicinal effect was reduced couldn't be due to the alchemists. It must be known that Lu Ping's current alchemy skills couldn't compare to Tianfeng and Tianqin Laozu. Lu Ping's doubts flashed in his mind. Although he didn't expect this kind of accident to occur, after discovering the reason why the spirit forging pill refined by Tianfeng Laozu had decreased in effectiveness, he immediately thought of another reason. Tiancheng Laozu looked at Lu Ping and asked with some eagerness, "How is it, boy? Did you think of the reason?" Lu Ping hesitated for a moment before saying, "Not yet, but this disciple needs to personally refine it in order to confirm some things. Could it be because of the water refinement?" Tiancheng Laozu glanced at Tianfeng Laozu beside him, then asked Lu Ping. Lu Ping shook his head and said, "The pills refined by the spirit water refining technique are extremely easy to identify. Among the 8 spirit forging pills obtained from Filing Mountain, there were no traces of the spirit water refining technique. Moreover, although the effects of the spirit water refining technique are good, only one pill can be refined at a time. However, one still needs to prepare a batch of spiritual herbs, which is not worth it for refining the spirit forging pill. Only those pills that are extremely difficult to refine or extremely special will use the spirit water refining technique." Tiancheng Laozu was a little disappointed, but Tianfeng Laozu seemed to have already expected that Lu Ping would say this. He smiled and said, "That's good too. We are far inferior to you in terms of alchemy. It just so happens that there is still some time before the Fist Valley space opens. You can use this time to refine a batch of pills and see what the reason is." On the way back to his stone room, Lu Ping was thinking about the situation of the spirit forging pill. His intuition told him that Tianfeng Laozu still had some things to say. Even if Tianfeng Laozu and Tianqin Laozu couldn't refine the spirit forging pill with full effectiveness, these 2 grandmasters must have some guesses about the reason. However, he didn't know why Tianfeng Laozu didn't tell him and only wanted him to refine a batch of pills first. Could it be that he simply wanted to verify the level of the alchemy skills of Lu Ping and the 2 Laozu, or was it something else? Lu Ping's thoughts turned and he sat quietly in the stone room for a whole day. Only then did he adjust his state to the best. Then, he waved his hand and the NH1 cauldron turned into a huge cauldron that was half the height of a person and landed in the stone room. Dozens of jade boxes flew out from Lu Ping's sleeves. The spirit sealing talisman on the surface of the jade boxes dimmed one by one. The jade boxes opened, and various well-preserved spiritual herbs flew out of thin air and landed in front of Lu Ping. A few days later, the 3 Laozu came to the rock cave again. Although there was a seal that Lu Ping had set up at the door of the stone room, the fragrance of resentment still penetrated the stone room and filled the entire rock cave. Tiancheng Laozu sniffed and fiercely inhaled 2 mouthfuls of the pill fragrance. His face was full of satisfaction. Then, he asked Tianshan Laozu who was beside him, "Senior brother, how effective do you think this kid's spirit forging pill will be?" Guo Tianshan Laozu hesitated for a moment and said, "If Master Fornax and junior sister Tianqin's guess is correct, this kid can really refine a complete spirit forging pill. However, his success rate will definitely not be as high as Master Fornax and junior sisters. Tian Cheng Laozu smiled and said, "This kid must have a lot of cards up his sleeve. If you don't force him, you will never know what other tricks he has up his sleeve." Tian Cheng Laozu pondered for a moment and then asked Tian Cheng Laozu, "Senior brother, why didn't you tell him about Master Fornak's and junior sister Tianqin's guess about the spirit forging pill's medicinal properties? Why did you want him to refine the pill first?" Tian Feng Laozu's gaze was deep as he said, "It doesn't matter if I tell him or not. We just need to see the results of his refining." Tian Cheng Laozu was a little displeased. "Aren't you afraid that this kid will have second thoughts?" Tian Feng Laozu said confidently, "He won't. The reason why the spirit forging elixir was called a half-step to the Dharma stage elixir was because the ratio and quantity of spirit herbs required to refine the elixir was similar to that of a half-step to the Dharma stage elixir. Furthermore, this elixir was only useful for core forging adepts and had no effect on Dharma adepts. However, the actual process of refining the spirit forging pill was even more difficult than that of a normal Dharma stage pill. After a series of preliminary preparations, it was already 3 days later when Lu Ping was ready to ignite the cauldron. After that, he spent another 5 days meticulously refining the pellets. Finally, it was time to condense the pellets. Actually, Lu Ping had his own guesses about why Tianlu and Tianqin Laozu were unable to refine the spirit forging pill. It was just that this guess was related to a secret technique that he had, so he did not want to say it out loud. There were 2 main reasons why Lu Ping had handed over the recipe for the minor forging pill to the sect. Firstly, Lu Ping had a spirit liquid that was better than the dew of vitality. Secondly, it was because of his spirit fire smelting purification technique. The small spirit forging pellet was originally an imitation of the spirit forging pellet, so it was closely related to the spirit forging pellet itself. However, the small spirit forging pellet only had a quarter of the medicinal effect of the spirit forging pellet. But after Lu Ping's purification technique, the medicinal effect of the small spirit forging pellet was increased to a third or even more of the medicinal effect of the spirit forging pellet. This made Lu Ping suspect that this purification technique was originally a common inheritance of Fei Ling sect, be it in alchemy or smithing. It was precisely because of this set of purification technique that Lu Ping obtained from a secret chamber in the ruins of Fei Ling Mountain's pavilion of smithing that allowed Lu Ping to refine spirit herbs and medicinal liquids with twice the effort and half the result during the alchemy process. It could be said that Lu Ping's rapid progress in alchemy was largely due to this set of purification technique that allowed him to improve his alchemy skills so quickly. Lu Ping speculated that the spirit forging pellets concocted by Zhenling sect were only 70% as effective as the original spirit forging pellets. This was most likely because the spirit forging pellets were originally from Fei Ling sect's secret art, the spirit fire smelting purification technique. Currently, he only had 3/4 of the Wonder Jade dew in his hand, which was a total of 27 drops. Presumably, this drop of Wonder Jade dew should be enough for the 4 remaining pills to be refined. The spirit chi in the pill furnace suddenly became somewhat chaotic, and Lu Ping's divine sense couldn't control it for a moment. He sighed inwardly. This spirit forging pill was indeed difficult to refine. The spirit chi in the pill furnace suddenly became somewhat chaotic, and his divine sense couldn't control it for a moment. Lu Ping sighed inwardly. This spirit forging pill was indeed difficult to refine. A jade bottle appeared in his hand, and Lu Ping hurriedly dripped a drop of purple crystal royal bee jelly into the pill furnace. When the 3rd drop of royal bee jelly appeared, the 4th pill suddenly turned into pure spirit chi and evaporated. After another moment, Lu Ping's eyes narrowed, and he reached out to pat the pill furnace. The pill furnace suddenly issued a distant roar, and the lid of the furnace rose into the air. 3 purple pills suddenly jumped out of the pill furnace and scattered in all directions in the stone room. Outside the stone room, Tianshan Laozu and the others heard the roar of the pill furnace, and their expressions were also shocked. The pills are formed. Inside the stone room, Lu Ping looked at the 3 spirit forging pills in the jade essence bottle, and he felt quite conflicted. It seemed that it was really because of the purification secret technique. Lu Ping sighed inwardly. Could it be that he really had to teach this secret technique to the sect? The restriction at the door of the stone room gradually melted, and Lu Ping walked out of the stone room with a face full of joy and doubt. Tian Cheng Laozu was impatient, and he hurriedly asked, "How is it?" Lu Ping handed the jade essence bottle to Tian Cheng Laozu, and Laozu hurriedly opened the bottle to check. After a moment, he exclaimed, "It's done. It's 100% spirit forging pill, and there's no loss of medicinal efficacy." Chapter 7:14. Tian Cheng Laozu's exclamation made Laozu and Tian Shan Laozu happy. The three of them carefully examined the 3 spirit forging pills that Lu Ping had refined. After a while, Tian Feng Laozu let out a long sigh and said, "It really is a 100% spirit forging pill. There is not a single loss of medicinal efficacy. Nephew Lu, how did you do it?" Tian Cheng Laozu and Tian Shan Laozu both looked at Lu Ping, but Lu Ping replied, "Disciple refined the spirit forging pill according to the recipe, there is no difference." Martial Uncle, does Master Tianlu and Martial Uncle Tianqin have any suspicions about this? Lu Ping threw the question back at them. Tian Shan Laozu and Tian Cheng Laozu both looked at him. Tian Feng Laozu smiled and said, "It seems that Master Tianlu and Martial Sister Tianqin have guessed correctly. This spirit forging pill may have something to do with the water attribute cultivation method of your world." When Lu Ping heard that he didn't suspect anything else, he felt as if a huge stone had been lifted from his heart. But when he heard Tian Feng Laozu's and Tianqin's guesses, Lu Ping's expression froze. Tian Feng Laozu saw Lu Ping's expression and smiled. "What, you also thought of it? When Martial Sister Tianqin heard that you knew the spirit water refining technique, she said that you might be able to refine the spirit forging pill. Master Tianlu thought that if you used the spirit water refining technique to refine the spirit forging pill, you would be able to refine a complete pill. But in terms of the various preparations needed to refine the spirit forging pill, it wouldn't be worth it." Lu Ping was originally conflicted about whether or not he should give the spirit forging technique to the sect. He didn't think that Tian Feng Laozu and the others didn't suspect that Lu Ping was hiding something, but that it was because of his water attribute cultivation method. Lu Ping's conflicted thoughts disappeared and his expression brightened. But in the eyes of Tian Feng Laozu and the others, Lu Ping also understood the reason, so he continued, "You should also know that the spirit forging pill refined by the spirit fire pill furnace will have some smoke and fire aura. Master Tianlu once carefully examined the spirit forging pill you brought back from Failing Island, and there was indeed smoke and fire aura. This means that the spirit forging pill was definitely not refined using the spirit water refining technique. However, the smoke and fire aura in the spirit forging pill was extremely weak, so weak that most alchemy grandmasters can't do it. Therefore, Master Tianlu suspected that the person who could refine the complete spirit forging pill must be someone like you, who cultivated a water attribute cultivation method, but somehow became a genius in alchemy. Only in this way, during the process of refining the pill, can your water attribute true yuan offset the smoke and fire aura in the pill to the greatest extent. Tian Feng Laozu's words caused Lu Ping to sink into deep thought. He originally thought that the spirit forging pill was not effective because of the spirit forging technique, but now it seemed that the purification technique was only one of the reasons, and the attribute of his own cultivation method was another. And Tianlu Laozu and Tianqin Laozu didn't suspect him, they just wanted to verify their own conjectures through him, but they didn't expect Lu Ping to have the heart of a villain. Lu Ping smiled bitterly as he shook his head. His own alchemy skills would eventually be passed down in Zhenling, and the spirit forging technique would definitely not be kept a secret by Lu Ping. However, he felt that now was not the right time. Moreover, even if Lu Ping wanted to pass down these things, he could only pass them on to his own disciples. It was impossible for him to tell the other alchemists in the Pill Pavilion. Lu Ping suddenly remembered that there were still 3 Laozus in front of him, and it was extremely inappropriate for him to be in such a daze. When he looked up, the 3 Laozus had already left the cave, and the 3 newly refined spirit forging pills had already been taken by them. Lu Ping helplessly smiled bitterly. Tian Feng Laozu's meaning was very clear. From now on, the sect's spirit forging pills would be entrusted to him alone to refine. Although the spirit forging pill was heaven-defying, it also had many restrictions. For example, The spiritual herbs required to refine it were extremely rare, and the 10,000 wonder dew was even rarer. Moreover, it was limited to 3 pills, and there were also restrictions on the quality of the refined spiritual objects. In the blink of an eye, 2 months had passed and Lu Ping had concocted another 4 cauldrons of spirit-forging pellets. Other than the cauldron he had concocted before and the cauldron he had prepared himself, Ancestor Tianfeng had also brought 3 cauldrons of spirit herbs and 3 drops of myriad wonder dew from Zhenling sect. Zhenling sect had prepared 5 cauldrons of spirit herbs for the spirit-forging pellets. The first 2 cauldrons were used by Sky Cauldron Ancestor and Sky Zither Ancestor respectively. But when the 2 discovered that their spirit-forging pellets were lacking in medicinal efficacy, they decisively gave up on the task. Instead, they asked enlightened Master Tianfeng to bring the remaining 3 cauldrons of spirit herbs to Lu Ping. Lu Ping had refined 4 batches of spirit-forging pills in a row. With the help of the amethyst royal jelly and the spirit explosion technique, he barely managed to maintain a success rate between 30% and 40%. In addition to the 3 spirit-forging pills he had refined in the first batch, he had refined a total of 17 spirit-forging pills. 11 of them were given to Tianfeng Laozu and the other 2, while Lu Ping kept 6 for himself. The Fist Valley space was about to reopen, and Lu Ping had used up all the spiritual herbs he had for the spirit-forging pills. Thus, he once again headed downstream. In the Fist Valley's Grotto Heaven, the 3 Yingshan Immortal Academy 3rd layer blood condensation realm disciples were all injured and looked to be in a sorry state. 3 fist-sized bees with purple crystal heads were flying around the 3 of them while buzzing. At the feet of the 3 were 4 cultivators who were already dead. From their clothes, it was clear that they were cultivators from the Jiyu family. Clearly, the additional cultivators had gotten into a conflict with the 3 Yingshan Immortal Academy cultivators, but in the end, the Yingshan Immortal Academy disciples emerged victorious. An Immortal Academy disciple whose head wasn't that large, but whose body was extremely fat kicked the Jiyu family cultivator next to him, saying, "Pa, you even wanted to follow this old one to set up an ambush, not knowing that we already noticed you all a long time ago. However, senior son, your strength has increased again, actually using just a few moves to remove that person's head." A cultivator who wasn't tall but was obviously the leader frowned and said, "Junior brother Chen, stop fooling around. If it wasn't for Elder Shen Ping's 3 3rd layer blood condensation realm bees and the talisman given by Elder Shen Ping, who knows how much effort it would take for us to kill these 4 people. Let's bury these people's corpses first. There are only a few days left before the Fist Valley space closes. We can't fail miserably during this time and allow the other 2 sex cultivators to track us using the corpses on the ground." Another Immortal Academy disciple, who was about 18 or 19 years old, collected the 4 people's storage pouches and laughed. "Ha ha, senior brother Sun, senior brother Chen, these 4 people really have a lot of good stuff on them. In total, there are more than 3,000 stalks of 500-year-old spiritual herbs and 7 to 800,000-year-old spiritual herbs. It seems that other than collecting the spiritual herbs themselves, these 4 people have probably killed and robbed quite a bit." Junior brother Chen, who had just stomped on the ground and created a 3-meter-wide pit, was overjoyed. "So much. Sigh, if it wasn't for the fact that we followed Elder Shen Ping's team's map to check a few places, the 3 of us might have gained more than them." Senior brother Sun, who was the leader, said unhappily, "Junior brother Chen, junior brother Ju, Elder Shen Ping's matter is more important. Even if we don't gain anything this time, we still have to complete Elder Shen Ping's orders." Junior brother Chen laughed and said, Of course, of course." The 4 of them divided the spiritual herbs and took a few mid-grade magical artifacts according to their needs. However, they suddenly heard the buzzing sound of the 3 demonic bees suddenly become much louder. The 3 of them stared blankly for a moment, then became happy. Junior brother Chen said, "Could it be that the demonic bees have discovered something?" Senior brother Sun's face also showed a trace of joy as he said, "According to the secret map that Elder Shen Ping gave us, there should be a secret spirit herb garden here. The places that we had been to before were either wastelands or were cut off by spatial cracks. We have been searching for more than 2 months, but we have found very little. Now that the demonic bees are flying around, it is obvious that they have found something. Junior brother Ju also said excitedly, "Then what are we waiting for? Hurry up and let go of the demonic bees, then we'll follow them to find the spiritual herb garden." The three of them followed the route the three demonic bees took, carefully avoiding several spatial cracks. Suddenly, their eyes lit up. The three of them looked at the scene in front of them, and their faces immediately became sluggish. Junior brother Chen raised his trembling hand and pointed in front of him. He said, This is a 3,000-year-old spiritual herb garden." Senior brother Sun immediately reacted. He could not hide the excitement on his face. He said, "What are we waiting for? Let's first release the blood-refining realm demonic bee swarm that Elder Shen Ping gave us, then we'll harvest everything here. But don't forget to leave a portion of the spiritual herb seeds behind." In another corner of the spatial crack, Tian Yu hurriedly flew forward. This spatial crack also prohibited cultivators from flying, so all cultivators could only walk on the ground. Ying Shan Immortal Academy's disciple in front, "Stop. Where can you run to?" A Mountain Universe Sect's Level 3 Blood Condensation Realm cultivator chased closely behind Tian Yu, while the other two cultivators flanked him from both sides. Gradually, they forced Tian Yu into a corner of a spatial crack. Tian Yu had nowhere to run, so he turned around and faced the three cultivators in front of him. He was originally a Level 6 Blood Condensation Realm cultivator, but now that his cultivation was sealed, he was chased for hundreds of kilometers by these three. In the end, he still could not escape. If he could survive this, he would definitely cultivate a few powerful spells and divine abilities when he returned to the Immortal Academy. Tian Yu's expression was filled with regret. He was only interested in alchemy. Although he had observed Daoist Shen Ping practicing the sword before, he did not put all of his attention on sword techniques like Wang Qi. He only practiced occasionally when he thought of it. Even so, if not for the few sword techniques that Lu Ping did not forget, Tian Yu would have been surrounded and killed by the three cultivators today. "Brat, your luck is not bad. Someone actually found a 3,000-year-old spiritual herb garden in that kind of place. You don't need the three of us to teach you what to do, right?" The leader of the group looked at the cultivator in front of him mockingly. "Seventh senior brother, although this guy's strength is ordinary, his sword techniques are very strange. Be careful not to fail miserably." Tian Yu silently took out a mid-grade flying sword. He had already made up his mind. If he could not withstand the three cultivators' attacks, he would break the seal on his cultivation. That way, the surrounding space would not be able to withstand the pressure of a mid-stage blood condensation realm cultivator, and it would collapse. He would not be able to escape death, and the three cultivators in front of him would be buried with him. Tian Yu already knew that since Daoist Shen Ping was so cautious in placing these secret maps, there must be a 3,000-year-old spiritual herb garden in them. Such a secret must not be known by the cultivators from the other two sects. Chapter 7:15. After Du Jialuo entered the Fist Valley, Debao rolled out from his sleeve. Du Jialuo looked at Debao, who was sniffing the ground as if searching for something. He asked cautiously, "Zhenren Debao, what should we do?" Lu Ping used a secret technique to forcibly seal Debao's cultivation from the second level of the core forging realm to the third level of the blood condensation realm. This powerful sealing technique was something Lu Ping learned from his teacher, Lao Zu. However, the price to pay for it was also very expensive. After the seal was removed, Debao's cultivation would return to the first level of the core forging realm. Although Debao was willing to go to all kinds of forbidden and dangerous places to search for all kinds of treasures, he was naturally unwilling to let his cultivation drop by one level. However, Lu Ping told Debao that if he still wanted to have a chance of advancing to the Transcendence realm in the future, it would be best for him to reduce his cultivation to the first level of the core forging realm. Debao was originally the lowest level spirit-seeking mouse in the cultivation world. He had relied on Lu Ping's continuous supply of elixirs to increase his cultivation to his current level. His own foundation was extremely weak. If Debao didn't consolidate his cultivation, even if Lu Ping continued to supply Debao with elixirs, it would be impossible for him to advance to the Transcendence realm. Although Dabao's cultivation was sealed, and he could only move around in his original form with the strength of the third level of the blood condensation realm, he could still speak. When he heard Lu Ping's question, he raised his head and looked at Du Jialuo. He chuckled and said, "Of course, I have to do some private work. Just follow me." In more than 2 months, under Dabao's lead, Du Jialuo found 7 to 8 spiritual herb gardens in the Fist Valley. The number of 500-year-old spiritual herbs he collected reached 2,000, and he even found nearly 1,000 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs. Such an achievement made Du Jialuo overjoyed. However, Dabao became more and more unhappy. He didn't care about these things that were below 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs. Other than his love for treasure hunting, the biggest reason he entered the Fist Valley this time was because Lu Ping learned from the memory of the pure Yang soul that this space was used as an important spiritual herb base by the Ying Tian sect. In the depths of the space, there were houses built by the disciples sent by the Ying Tian sect to watch over and cultivate the spiritual herbs. However, as Dabao followed the paths Lu Ping drew for him, he kept running into spatial cracks, and other obstacles. In the end, he had no choice but to change his route. Fortunately, although these routes were blocked, the places along the way happened to be densely packed with spiritual herb gardens that the Ying Tian sect opened. Du Jialuo took the opportunity to gain quite a lot. This time, seeing that the space was about to close, Dabao had already tried to follow the last route to see if he could enter the depths of the space. Not only were there houses built by the Ying Tian sect disciples, but the place where the houses were built was also where the spiritual vein of the entire space was located. The places that were closer to the spiritual vein were naturally densely packed with 3,000-year-old spiritual herb gardens. At this moment, Dabao's body, which was rolling forward rapidly like a meatball, suddenly stopped. Du Jialuo, who was chasing closely behind, took the opportunity to let out a breath. Just when he was about to speak, he heard Dabao whisper, "Be quiet." Hearing this, Du Jialuo hurriedly restrained his aura and focused his voice. At the same time, he threw Da Bao to his mid-grade magic tool. Du Jialuo had encountered similar situations a few times before. With Da Bao's talent, they had avoided many cultivators from other sects. Da Bao's nose twitched rapidly. A moment later, a sliver of surprise flashed across his eyes. He turned around and said to Du Jialuo, "There seems to be a fellow disciple of yours being surrounded and attacked by 3 people in front. The situation doesn't look good." Du Jialuo's expression became anxious. Enlightened Dabao, "Let's go and help him." Dabao glanced at Du Jialuo and said, "We must help him, but it depends on how we help him. If we go up like this, a first-layer blood condensation realm miner repairs and a third-layer blood condensation realm rat demon can't do anything." Tian Yu's current situation was very bad. He was surrounded by 3 third-layer blood condensation realm mountain sect disciples. He wasn't good at fighting, and his cultivation was sealed. How could he fight against the 3 of them? Fortunately, Tian Yu had a third-layer blood condensation realm wasp with him. Even though the wasp was weaker than him, it became a great help to him. Tian Yu was like a crazed tiger. He was fighting with his life on the line. If the other 3 weren't confident in their victory, Tian Yu would have been killed a long time ago. Tian Yu casually touched his waist and swallowed a vitality replenishing pill. It turned into a warm current that was absorbed and transformed by his bloodline, nourishing the magic power in his bloodline that was drying up. How many pills does this brat have on him? Isn't he afraid of the medicinal toxins accumulating in his body and killing him? One of the mountain sect disciples cursed as he defended against Tian Yu's frenzied attacks. Could this guy be an alchemist? I think he's a spoiled brat. He has a lot of good stuff on him, but his skills are lacking. Not necessarily. His sword techniques are very exquisite, but he looks like he hasn't practiced them for a long time. Why does he look so awkward? Mph, he's learning to protect himself to this extent. He deserves to die in our hands today. Everyone, put in more effort. Whether he's an alchemist or a spoiled brat, all the good stuff on him will belong to us after he dies. The greed in the 3's eyes intensified. They no longer fought with Tian Yu. The 3 of them attacked together, and a few more wounds appeared on Tian Yu's body. Tian Yu only had a sliver of consciousness left. If he could no longer defend against the three's attacks, he would unseal his cultivation. When that happened, he would perish together with the three of them. Right at this moment, a strange spiritual energy suddenly exploded under everyone's feet. The three people who were attacking Tian Yu suddenly felt their bodies sink, as if they were carrying a heavy pressure on their backs. Their previously nimble movements suddenly became difficult to move. Not good. Someone's ambushing us. Who is it? Show yourself. The three of them circulated the magic power in their bodies to push away the huge force that was pressing down on them. Tian Yu, who had already given up all hope, suddenly became spirited. He used a sword technique and slashed a half-foot-long wound on a Mountain Universe sect disciple's body. Although the attack of this strange power disrupted the rhythm of the three people's attacks, after the three of them circulated their magic power, they were still able to resist this kind of magic. However, just as the three of them had shaken off the huge force, before they could even react, a figure was already rushing towards them. At the same time, an iron hammer magic artifact flew out of his hand, transforming into a giant hammer that was half a jong in size in the air. Then, it fiercely smashed towards one of the Mountain Universe sect disciples. So it's another Ying Shan Immortal Academy disciple who's seeking death. He's only at the first stage of the blood condensation realm. He's simply courting death. Seeing that Du Jialuo was attacking him, the Mountain Universe sect disciple hurriedly used all his strength. However, he still had a ferocious expression on his face as he raised the magic weapon in his hand and counterattacked Du Jialuo. Dang! The Mountain Universe sect disciple instantly felt a huge force descending from the sky. His body was fiercely nailed into the ground by half a foot, and his magic power almost dissipated. The giant hammer returned, and the flying figure only paused for a moment before launching another attack at him. This time, the Mountain Universe sect disciple didn't dare to underestimate his opponent. He focused 120% of his attention and tried to reverse the passive effect of the hammer strike. Just as Du Jialuo rushed over and launched a sneak attack on one of the Mountain Universe sect disciples, the other Mountain Universe sect disciple saw that Du Jialuo's hammer strike had caused his companion to suffer. He wanted to deal with this first stage blood condensation realm minor repairs first. However, before he could make a move, more than 10 talismans suddenly appeared in front of him. Fireballs, frost arrows, blood-sucking vines, golden light thorns, meteor techniques, and more than 10 other spells flew towards him. The power of each talisman was equivalent to an attack from an early-stage blood condensation cultivator. In an instant, the Mountain Universe sect disciple's soul was shattered. Fortunately, this Mountain Universe sect disciple wasn't a weakling. He wielded a spear magic weapon and shot out dozens of spear shadows, destroying the spells one by one. However, before he could even catch his breath, another 10 talismans flew towards him. The Mountain Universe sect disciple cursed at this wastrel. He felt so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. The Mountain Universe sect disciple tried to dodge, but just as he took a step forward, the ground beneath his feet suddenly collapsed. The Mountain Universe sect disciple cursed inwardly. Just as he was about to use his magic power to stabilize himself, the pressure on everyone suddenly increased. The Mountain Universe sect disciple staggered and fell into the pit. 2 pill-like beads were suddenly thrown out from the ground. Then, under the Mountain Universe sect disciple's confused gaze, the beads suddenly exploded into 2 sharp sword chi that sliced towards the Mountain Universe sect disciple's neck. What kind of strange spell was this? The Mountain Universe sect disciple wasn't a weakling. He shook the spear in his hand and destroyed one of the sword chi. However, his legs tightened, and it was too late for him to dodge the other sword chi. He could only try his best to avoid being hit in his vital organs, and one of his arms fell off his body. The Mountain Universe sect disciple knew that he couldn't escape. He used his magic power to break free from the shackles on his legs and tried to escape. However, he didn't have the chance to escape. Another pill flew towards him. This one was different from the previous 2 pills. This one suddenly exploded. It was a ball of black flames. The Mountain Universe sect disciple's face changed when the blood dripping from his shoulder was burned by the black flames. But before he could scream, his entire body suddenly turned black and turned into ashes in the flames. Dabao crawled out from the ground. He really had foresight. He made up his mind to collect everything that Lu Ping had thrown away. At the very least, these talismans and intentional battle pills that Lu Ping had been using for practice would be put to good use. However, he didn't think about it. He was a core forging stage beast cultivator. If he undid the seal, then even if hundreds of these things were thrown at him, they wouldn't be able to harm a single hair on his body. Seeing Dabao easily finish off his opponent, the other two Mountain Universe sect cultivators were shocked and they wanted to run away. At this time, how could Tian Yu let go? Du Jialuo was also doing his best to entangle his opponent with the help of a monster wasp. Dabao's rat eyes flashed with a trace of craftiness and he dove into the ground. It was unknown where he went. The two Mountain Universe sect disciples suddenly panicked. They were immediately distracted by Dabao, who could appear at any time. Tian Yu and Du Jialuo's spirits rose and their attacks became sharper. The two of them became more and more skilled. Chapter 716. Lu Dagui transformed into his original form and carried Lu Ping along the Ying River towards the Fist Valley's space. Although the Ying River had many twists and turns in the Ying mountain range, Lu Ping could greatly reduce the time and distance if he flew. However, Lu Ping was naturally fond of water and would rather carry Lu Dagui downstream. When Lu Ping arrived at the entrance of the Fist Valley space, perfected Jiyu Hun and perfected Jian Ming had already returned. However, the person who came from the Mountain Universe sect was not Pang Feiyun, but another late-stage core forging realm cultivator. When Lu Ping arrived, this cultivator looked at Lu Ping carefully. Lu Ping followed the gaze of the person but did not take it to heart. In the Fist Valley space, although Du Jialuo was only at the first stage of the blood condensation realm, he appeared to be quite calm when fighting against the Mountain Universe sect's third-stage blood condensation realm disciple. Several times, the cultivators from Mountain Universe Order had attempted to snatch the initiative from Du Jialuo. However, Du Jialuo was able to accurately control his attacks and defenses, allowing him to firmly suppress the cultivators from Mountain Universe Order. However, one of the main reasons why Du Jialuo was able to suppress the Mountain Universe sect's cultivators was because the gravity technique that Dabao had cast on them was still working. Compared to Du Jialuo, Tian Yu's situation seemed to be better. After all, Tian Yu was a mid-stage blood condensation realm cultivator with his cultivation sealed. Although he was not good at fighting, after fighting for a while, Tian Yu's sword techniques seemed much sharper. However, when Dabao made his move, he still helped Tian Yu first. After dealing with Tian Yu's opponent, the two of them turned around to deal with the last Mountain Universe sect's cultivator who was planning to escape. After collecting the spiritual herbs from the three Mountain Universe sect's cultivators, Tian Yu handed all the mid-grade magic tools they used to Du Jialuo. Du Jialuo wanted to decline, but Dabao smiled and said, he might not be strong, but he is still a mid-blood condensation realm cultivator. He has always had good magic tools. You can keep these magic tools for yourself. He has better ones. Du Jialuo was still hesitating, but Tian Yu had already smiled and said, I am an alchemist, I originally did not need these things. Junior brother, feel free to take them. Dabao rummaged through the storage artifact under his neck for a long time and finally took out a jade bottle. He took out a pill and threw it to Tian Yu. This is the poison cleansing pill that boss refined back then. It's the most suitable for someone like you who swallowed a large number of pills in a short period of time, resulting in the accumulation of pill toxins. From Du Jialuo's point of view, this senior brother in front of him seemed to be very familiar with perfected Dabao. He directly swallowed the pill that perfected Dabao handed to him and started refining it. Although Dabao knew that these two people in front of him were people that Lu Ping valued and there was a high chance that they would become Lu Ping's disciples in the future, Lu Ping did not say anything about the matter. Dabao also did not know what Lu Ping's rules were. Hence, Dabao did not mention these things at all. The three of them continued to recover their magic power. Tian Yu also wanted to use this opportunity to recover from his injuries. In the blink of an eye, 6 hours passed. Dabao and Du Jialuo had already recovered. Tian Yu, on the other hand, was still circulating his cultivation technique to treat his internal injuries. This was especially so because he had swallowed a large number of pills that he did not have time to refine in time. As a result, a lot of pill toxins had accumulated in his body. Fortunately, perfected Dabao had collected the blood condensation realm pills that Lu Ping had refined in the past. Now, it came in handy. Tian Yu's face changed from green to white. A moment later, a surge of blood energy suddenly rushed into his body. Tian Yu's eyes suddenly opened and he swallowed a mouthful of dirty blood. Tian Yu's face was still pale, but his spirit was much better than before. Dabao nodded his head slightly and said, "The pill toxins have been forced out. Although your injuries have not fully recovered, at least it will not hinder your cultivation in the future." The two of them followed behind Dabao, moving along the edge of the spatial cracks. After an unknown period of time, Dabao finally stopped and said, "All right, it should be here. Let's hope that we can directly reach the deepest part of the spatial crack this time." Tian Yu hesitated for a moment and said, "Perfected Dabao, where are we going? Did Uncle Master Shenping give us any orders?" Perfected Dabao rolled his eyes. It was unknown how his rat eyes could roll so much. He said, "Of course it's boss's orders. Otherwise, why would I, Lu Dabao, a dignified core forging realm beast cultivator, pay such a huge price and take such a big risk to come to this place? All right, don't ask anymore. This place is full of dangers. Follow me closely and pass through the cracks in the spatial crack. If we can reach our destination, we will naturally understand the mission this time." In an area surrounded by spatial cracks, 3 Immortal Academy disciples carefully gathered a patch of 3,000-year-old spirit herbs and placed them into the spirit sealing boxes that Lu Ping gave them. These 3 were the only Immortal Academy disciples who had reached the 3rd layer of the blood condensation realm. After placing the last 3,000-year-old spirit herb into his spirit sealing box, junior brother Chen hurriedly stood up and stretched. He said, "We're finally done. Senior brother Sun, do you think we suffered a loss this time? It's been 3 whole months, but we only found 2 spirit herb gardens hidden in the spatial cracks. There are only a few hundred spirit herbs in total, and we were almost ambushed by a group of Jiyu clan cultivators." Before senior brother Sun could speak, junior brother Ju spoke first. "Suffered a loss. This is a 3,000-year-old spirit herb. If we were to exchange it with a 1,000-year-old spirit herb, it would be worth 10 times. Our few hundred 3,000-year-old spirit herbs are worth close to 10,000 1,000-year-old spirit herbs, let alone 500-year-old spirit herbs." Junior brother Chen laughed and said, "Haha, that's true, that's true. I just feel that it's a pity. We spent more than 2 months searching for the 7 secret locations that Sage Shenping gave us, but only 2 of them exist. The others have all been sealed by the spatial cracks. If the other 5 were not sealed by the spatial cracks, then our harvest would be really great." Junior brother Ju curled his lips. On the surface, he couldn't be bothered to pay attention to this greedy guy, but his heart was filled with regret like junior brother Chen. He looked at senior brother Sun beside him and saw that he was thinking about something with his head lowered. He asked curiously, "Senior brother Sun, what are you thinking about?" Senior brother Sun said in a low voice, "You said that the disciples of Ying He, Ying Shan, and Dao space sects had entered this space at least 8 times, if not 10 times. How come they didn't discover these spirit herb gardens hidden between the spatial cracks? Daoist Shenping had never entered it, so how could he give each of us a map of this space, and even have 7 hidden secret places?" Junior brother Chen raised his eyebrows and said, "Isn't that obvious? The depths of these 2 secret places are so dangerous. If we didn't have Elder Xuanping's map in our hands, how would we dare to enter the depths of the spatial cracks?" Senior brother Sun nodded and said, "Junior brother Chen is right. But the key question is, how did Elder Shenping know the situation in this space so clearly?" Junior martial brother Chen and junior martial brother Ju looked at each other. After a long while, junior martial brother Ju said, "How can we know about these things? Elder Shenping has remarkable abilities. His means are not something we can estimate." Senior brother Sun raised his head expectantly and said, "That's true. But junior brothers, Do you remember what Elder Shenping said before? If we come out of this space unscathed, he has a way to help all of us advance to the fourth layer of the blood condensation realm. Once we reach the fourth layer, we will be able to worship a core forging cultivator from the Immortal Academy as our master. Junior brother Qian swallowed and said, Senior brother Sun, it can't be, you want to become Elder Shuangping's disciple? Senior brother Sun stared blankly for a moment, and only then did he say with a bitter smile, I do want to, but that would still require Elder Shenping's favor. However, I heard an immortal elder from our Immortal Academy inadvertently say that Elder Shenping indeed hasn't accepted any disciples, because there has never been anyone who could enter his elder's eyes. Junior brother Ju was puzzled and asked, Then what do you mean, senior brother? Senior brother Sun said, I heard some news from the Immortal Academy. Normally, when a cultivator reaches the mid-blood condensation realm, they will have the qualifications to become a core forging enlightened master's disciple, but they will only become an in-name disciple. However, if they are talented and want to improve themselves, or if they have some special talent, they can directly become a core forging enlightened master's personal disciple. In the future, they might even inherit the enlightened master's legacy and become his direct disciple. Senior brother Sun looked at junior brother Qian and junior brother Ju and said, I'm telling you this because the three of us have the highest achievements among this batch of Immortal Academy disciples. If we want to advance to the mid-blood condensation realm, we would rather not have a master for now. We have to think carefully about who we want to be under. Of course, it would be best if we can become a personal disciple in one go. That way, our achievements in the future will be even higher. Du Jialuo and Tian Yu followed behind Dabao, making many turns and twists. They avoided the spatial cracks that could easily devour or cut them in half. When the two of them started to feel dizzy, they finally saw Dabao stop in front of them. When the two of them looked up, the scene in front of them left them dumbfounded. Fortunately, Dabao had seen more shocking scenes with Lu Ping. Even though the scene here also made Dabao gasp in surprise, he immediately turned around and said to the two of them, What are you waiting for? Hurry up and release the bee swarm that boss gave you. Oh. Tian Yu quickly released the 50 blood-refining realm amethyst bees. Du Jialuo did not have the bee swarm that Lu Ping gave him. Seeing that Tian Yu released the level 3 blood condensation realm amethyst bee, Du Jialuo also released his own. Dabao looked at the dozens of demonic bees, then looked at the large spiritual herb garden in front of him. Then, he took out a spirit beast bag out of nowhere and shook it with all his might. Nearly 100 blood-refining realm amethyst bees were shaken out. When they saw the spiritual herb garden in front of them, they really swarmed towards the spiritual herb garden. Du Jialuo and Tian Yu also walked towards the spiritual herb garden. Dabao stopped them and said, Hey, where are you two going? The two of them stopped and looked back in confusion. Gathering spiritual herbs. Who knows when we will finish gathering such a large spiritual herb garden? There's not much time left before the Fist Valley space closes. Follow me to another place first. Chapter 717. After passing through the vast spiritual herb garden, a row of wooden houses surrounded by fences appeared in front of everyone. When Du Jialuo and Tian Yu saw the wooden house, they felt an inexplicable sense of excitement. As cultivators, the two of them had never had the experience of exploring the ruins before. There was no need to talk about Du Jialuo, he had only cultivated for a short period of time, always staying in Immortal Academy, so he didn't have much experience. Meanwhile, Tian Yu's strength was meager to begin with, and pill refinement was a noble profession to begin with, so there was no need for him to risk his life to explore all types of dangerous historical remains. Therefore, when the two of them saw an ordinary house that looked like a wooden hut, their excitement was immediately aroused. This house was clearly built by the Surplus Heavens sect to manage the spirit herb garden in this space. How could a cultivator who could manage such a large spirit herb garden be ordinary? On the other hand, even if the cultivators who managed this spiritual herb garden were just a few unknown core forging cultivators, if they really left anything behind, it would be a huge fortune for blood condensation realm minor repairs cultivators like Du Jialuo and Tian Yu. The temptation of the wooden house made the two of them lose their vigilance. Du Jialuo wanted to move forward, but he suddenly felt as if he was carrying a huge mountain on his back. Du Jialuo looked back in surprise, only to see that Dabao had stopped on the ground at some point. He said, "Don't go in yet." When Du Jialuo heard this, he immediately came to a realization. He was startled. Tian Yu, who was beside him, also hurriedly stopped when he heard this. Dabao waved his paw on the ground, and a small stone shot into the fence with a whistling sound. Suddenly, an invisible barrier appeared around the fence. The small stone hit the barrier, and ripples immediately appeared around the barrier. However, the small stone suddenly shattered into powder before it hit the ground. Hiss! Tian Yu and Du Jialuo immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. Fortunately, the two of them had been stopped by Dabao earlier. If they had charged head-on like that, given their cultivations, they definitely would not have been able to dodge the rebound of the invisible barrier. This is an array formation? Tian Yu was more knowledgeable than Du Jialuo, so he asked Dabao, who was on the ground. Dabao's expression was a little solemn as he said, "It is indeed a formation, and it has been operating for 4,000 years. It is obvious that this place is supported by a spirit vein, and from the looks of it, the grade of the spirit vein is above a mid-grade spirit vein." Tian Yu and Du Jialuo knew about spirit veins. When Yingshan Immortal Academy was first established, there was only one spirit vein. 10 years later, after Heavenly Mountain Laozu perfected Liu Shenyuan, and the others worked hard to manage it, Yingshan Immortal Academy gained another 6 small-sized spirit veins. As for Heavenly Mountain Laozu, he did not open his sect to the masses. Instead, he took the path of elite disciples. Actually, the restriction of the mountain range spirit veins was also an important reason. Dabao suddenly stood up and waved his 2 front paws as if he was making some sort of hand sign. Then, as if he was using his 2 hind legs to support his fat body, he seemed to be unable to do so, and suddenly fell back to the ground. Just as Du Jialuo and Tian Yu were feeling a little confused, they saw 5 purple crystal wasps split off from the swarm of wasps that were circling behind them to collect nectar. They flew in different directions of the wooden house. Seeing that the purple crystal wasps were about to hit the invisible barrier, Du Jialuo hurriedly said, "Perfected Dabao, these are demon soldiers that Elder Shenping nurture." Just as Du Jialuo finished speaking, he saw 4 of the 5 purple crystal wasps that were flying in different directions explode when they touched the invisible barrier, while the remaining one was only bounced back. The purple crystal wasps flapped their wings and flew forward again, only to be bounced back a second time. They circled for a moment before flying back to the spiritual grass at the back. Dabao chuckled and said, "We don't have any formation masters among us. If we want to find an entry point, it's impossible to use lifeless stones. In that case, we can only use demonic wasps. Do we have to do it ourselves?" Dabao pretended to be a senior and spoke seriously, but he rolled his eyes again in his heart. Boss has at least 8,000 purple crystal wasps, if not 10,000. A few blood-refining wasps don't even have purple crystals on them. If they die, they die. As long as that little girl Zilan is here, the swarm will be replenished very soon. Boss won't care about this. The 3 of them looked in the direction where the purple crystal wasps had flown and saw that it was the fence at the entrance of the fence. Looks like this is the entrance to the magic array. Back then, the cultivator inside the house was in a hurry to leave. Thus, he did not activate the magic array protecting the house. Instead, he had casually set up a restrictive array at the entrance, Chen Feng thought. Du Jialuo and Tian Yu were greatly impressed by Dabao's words. As expected of a spirit pet that had followed Elder Shenping for many years. This level of knowledge was far beyond what the 2 of them could hope to match. Let's join forces and attack this restriction. Let's see if we can break it. Da Bao casually pulled out a mid-grade magic artifact from his storage magic artifact. Tian Yu was using a mid-grade flying sword while Du Jialuo was using a mid-grade magic artifact. It was the giant hammer from earlier. Du Jialuo was originally only at the first layer of the blood condensation realm. However, when he first activated his bloodline and started cultivating, He had received guidance from Lu Ping several times. After he advanced to the blood condensation realm, he also received the inheritance of Ying Tian sect's Fei Tian Laozu from Lu Ping. His strength was quite extraordinary. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to tangle with a third-layer blood condensation realm disciple from the Mountain Universe sect. The combined attack of the 3 mid-grade magic tools bounced back. The restriction light barrier at the entrance of the fence only shook a few times like the surface of water. Du Jialuo and Tian Yu saw that the 3's all-out attack didn't affect the restriction at all. They knew that the cultivator who set up the restriction was far stronger than the 3 of them. Unless enlightened Dabao broke the seal and used his core forging strength to break the restriction, it would be difficult for him to do so. Du Jialuo hesitated for a moment before asking with a lack of confidence, Daoist Master Dabao, why don't we gather all the demon soldiers together? If Daoist Master knows how to control demon soldiers, then we can combine the power of all the demon soldiers and add the 3 of us to try and break this restriction. Dabao thought to himself that this kid actually dared to make a move. However, he still shook his head and said, what can these few demon soldiers do? Moreover, the most important thing for these demon soldiers now is to collect nectar, not to break the restriction. He didn't know if the other 3 kids found a secret spiritual herb garden in the space. There were a lot of spiritual herbs and they were old enough. The quality of the nectar collected by the purple crystal bees must be high enough. Zealand's queen bee would be able to brew more royal jelly. She was currently at the 2nd stage of the core forging realm. If she personally brought the queen bee into this space, she would definitely be able to advance to the 3rd stage of the core forging realm in the future. Dabao looked at the purple crystal bees hovering in the spiritual herb garden behind him with some pity. There were 2 ways for the purple crystal bees, including the queen bee, to increase their cultivation. One was to absorb spiritual energy on their own to cultivate, and the other was to absorb the essence of various plants in the process of collecting nectar to enhance their own cultivation. After the purple crystal bee Queen Zilan advanced to the 2nd stage of the core forging realm, her cultivation progress had been very slow in the past few years because she hadn't found a large spiritual herb garden with sufficient quantity and quality. If the queen bee could lead the swarm into the space of the Fist Valley, Zilan's cultivation would definitely improve. Perfected Master Dabao, what should we do now? Tian Yu's words interrupted Dabao's thoughts. Dabao looked at the invisible barrier in front of him again and chuckled. Then, he took out a talisman with a mixture of 3 colors under the 2's expectant gazes. This is a restriction-breaking talisman? Tian Yu looked at the talisman in Dabao's hand with uncertainty. A trace of joy flashed across his face. Dabao didn't answer. Instead, he threw the 3-colored restriction-breaking talisman at the invisible barrier in front of him. Lu Ping was also proficient in talisman making in his early years. However, after advancing to the blood condensation realm, Lu Ping became obsessed with the art of alchemy and put his talisman making skills aside. It wasn't that his talent in talisman making was inferior to his alchemy skills. Now that he had obtained the Ying Tian faction's talisman inheritance in the Ying Tian dojo, especially the complete inheritance of the 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman, Lu Ping picked up the talisman making skills again. During the 10 years of closed-door cultivation, he quickly made the 3-colored restriction-breaking talisman. During this trip to the Fist Valley, Lu Ping already knew that there was a small courtyard left behind by a spirit plant farmer of the Ying Tian faction in the space. It was used to guard and manage the growth of the spirit herbs in this space. Naturally, he also knew about the invisible barrier outside the fenced courtyard. Therefore, he gave the 3-colored restriction-breaking talisman that he made recently to Dabao just in case. 3 colorful rays of light swept through the talisman, and the barrier at the fenced courtyard immediately began to melt as if it was snow under the warm sun. Dabao suddenly shouted, "Hurry up, let's put in more effort." The 3 of them worked with all their might again. The barrier that had been torn open by the restriction-breaking talisman was completely shattered, and the house finally opened up to the 3 of them. Du Jialuo looked at Dabao and thought about Dabao's endless tricks and treasures along the way in the space. He couldn't help but say enviously, "Zhenren Dabao, I think you should be called Zhenren Duo Bao. Treasure-seeking rat should also be called Duo Bao Rat." Dabao was stunned, but Tian Yu laughed and said, Junior brother Du, Zhenren de Bao doesn't dare to be called Zhenren Duo Bao, but I can call you Duo Bao Rat. Du Jialuo was confused and wanted to ask, but de Bao shouted, hurry up and go in. What nonsense are you talking about? Du Jialuo was confused, but when he saw that Tian Yu had already followed de Bao into the fenced courtyard with a smile, Du Jialuo could only put his doubts aside for the time being. His curiosity about the fenced courtyard immediately took over. There was a layer of excitement on his face, and he hurriedly ran into the fenced courtyard. Chapter 718. Outside the Fist Valley space, Lu Ping and the other 4 late-stage core forging realm cultivators worked together to open the Fist Valley space again. Half a day had passed, and more than half of the cultivators had returned. They handed their harvests to the alchemy masters from the various sects to sort them out. Out of the 18 cultivators from Zhenling's sect, only 8 returned. Not even half of them returned. 3 of them were heavily injured, and the 4 third-level Blood Condensation Realm disciples that entered the Blood Condensation Realm didn't return. Out of the 24 disciples from the Jiyu clan, 15 had returned, and the Mountain Universe sect had also returned with 11 disciples. Both of them had far surpassed the Yingshan Immortal Academy. The disciples from the 2 sects had already begun to discuss among themselves, and there were sneers from time to time. The disciples that they had painstakingly nurtured had died in the Fist Valley space. Obviously, they thought that Zhenling would definitely suffer a huge loss this time. Looking at Lu Ping, who had his eyes closed and a calm expression, enlightened Master Shen Fang was the first to lose his cool. He walked towards Lu Ping and said, "Senior brother, what do you think?" Lu Ping opened his eyes and looked at enlightened Master Shen Fang. He smiled and said, "Junior brother, don't be impatient. There's still half a day left. You just need to wait patiently." Enlightened Master Shen Fang felt much more at ease when he saw Lu Ping's confident expression. However, he heard a sneer in his ear. This enlightened Master Shen Ping sure is patient. He doesn't care about the lives of his own disciples at all. Enlightened Master Fei Hong looked at his junior brother with some reproach. Just as he was about to say something, Lu Ping glanced at him indifferently and said, "Who are you? Tell me your name." This enlightened master who came to replace Pang Fei Yun felt as if a pair of sharp swords were stabbing at him when Lu Ping looked at him. He felt as if his entire body was immersed in ice. However, when he heard Lu Ping's disdainful words and expression, his face immediately turned red. He pointed at Lu Ping and said coldly, "You're too arrogant. When the matter in the Fist Valley is over, I'll definitely ask for a few moves from you." Lu Ping didn't even bother to look at him. He just casually said, "It's the same if you ask for advice now. You." This Zhenren was a rather magnanimous person in the sect. Otherwise, he would not have been sent to take over Pang Fei Yun's duties. However, he was provoked by Lu Ping's words, and he was unable to back down. Because he knew that he was no match for Lu Ping. Daoist Master Flying Rainbow blamed his junior brother for being impetuous, but then his expression changed and he said, a disciple is coming out." Everyone was attracted by the movement in the space tunnel. The Mountain Universe sect's Daoist Master fiercely turned his face away. How could he not know that his senior sister was taking the opportunity to find a way out of this embarrassing situation? However, this made the people who wanted to watch the show secretly sigh, "What a pity." Lu Ping looked at Daoist Master Flying Rainbow and thought to himself that this core forging level 8 alchemy Grandmaster's divine will was really not bad. It seemed to be a level higher than a peak core forging level cultivator's divine will. It was almost comparable to the divine will of a Dharma adept. This time, a disciple from the Jiyu clan came out first, followed by a disciple from the Mountain Universe sect. However, no one from the Yingshan Immortal Academy appeared. Daoist Shen Fang looked worriedly at Lu Ping, who still didn't seem to care. On the other side, the Mountain Universe sect's Daoist master glanced in the direction of the Immortal Academy and sneered silently. Lu Ping wasn't worried because the Amethyst Queen Bee told him that there were at least 5 third-level Blood Condensation Realm bees alive. At the same time, there were also 5 bee swarms active. Of Lu Ping's 5 bee swarms, The 4 third-level blood condensation realm disciples each carried 1 bee swarm. The largest 100-bee swarm was with Dabao, and Dabao followed Du Jialuo into the space. This meant that the 4 third-level blood condensation realm disciples and Du Jialuo were still alive. This meant that there were at least 5 Ying Shan Immortal Academy disciples alive. As for the other 5, the Amethyst Queen Bee had already informed Lu Ping that the aura of the amethyst bees on their bodies had disappeared. This meant that they must have been ambushed in the space, and the amethyst bees they carried with them had already died. This meant that the 5 of them were probably dead. In the Fist Valley space, Du Jialuo and Tian Yu each stuck a divine movement talisman on their legs. If it wasn't for the fact that they couldn't fly in this space, they wouldn't have needed to use these talismans. At the same time, the 2 of them were amazed that Daoist Master Dabao even had these talismans on him. As Du Jialuo ran, he said to Tian Yu, "It's such a pity that senior brother Tian is still alive. There's such a large spiritual herb garden around the house, but we only had time to collect all the 3,000-year spiritual herbs. There are still a large amount of 1,000-year spiritual herbs and 500-year spiritual herbs growing there." Tian Yu also felt that it was a pity, but he still said, "All right, our harvest this time can be said to be the most in the Fist Valley space. We got nearly 1,000 3,000-year spiritual herbs in one go. What's there to complain about? If we continue to collect those 1,000-year spiritual herbs, I'm afraid the Fist Valley space will close." At this moment, Dabao, who was hiding in Du Jialuo's sleeve, suddenly exclaimed, 2 miles to the east, there's actually a group of Immortal Academy disciples who haven't left the space. Let's go meet up with them." Du Jialuo and Tian Yu heard this and quickly headed east. 2 miles passed in the blink of an eye, and they heard Dabao say again, "I was wondering why the 3 of you were standing there without moving. We were originally blocked by someone. The 2 of you, take these things and fight your way out during the chaos later. There's not much time left. If we continue to delay, we will all be sealed in this space." Du Jialuo and Tian Yu each took the things that Dabao handed over. The 2 of them looked at each other and thought to themselves, "This perfected Dabao is so unreasonable in beating people up." Senior Martial Brother Sun, Junior Martial Brother Chen, and Junior Martial Brother Ju were also unlucky. They had been chased all the way here, and it wasn't easy for them to find the 2 secret areas marked out by Lu Ping on the map. After collecting a few hundred 3,000-year-old spirit herbs, they were once again ambushed. "Ying Shan Immortal Academy, I advise you to hand over all the spiritual herbs on you. That way, we will let bygones be bygones for the fact that the 3 of you killed a disciple of my Jiyu clan. Otherwise, the 3 of you can stay here and wait for death." 3 purple-headed demonic bees surrounded the 3 Ying Shan Immortal Academy 3rd layer blood condensation realm disciples. The 3 of them had already been blocked by 3 Jiyu family disciples and 2 Mountain Universe sect disciples. The leader of the 3, Senior Brother Sun, sneered, "Don't think that I don't know about your tricks. If not for the demon weapons that Elder Shen Ping bestowed on us, the 5 of you would have already attacked us. Now you want us to hand over our things? That's just wishful thinking. If worst comes to worst, we'll just have to fight to the death. In any case, the spatial gate is closing right in front of us. Even if the 3 of us aren't your match, it's still easy for us to hold you up. You dare? Do the 3 of you really think that we won't dare to surround and kill you? Don't think that you are safe just because you have a few demon weapons on you. They are only at the 1st layer of blood condensation realm. What can they do?" Senior Brother Sun looked at the other party's fierce expression. There was a trace of panic in his eyes. From time to time, he glanced behind him, clearly calculating the time when the space would close. Senior Brother Sun sneered and looked at the 2 disciples of the Mountain Universe sect beside him. "That's strange. These 2 are clearly disciples of the Mountain Universe sect. Why are they together with the cultivators of the Jiyu family?" The 2 Mountain Universe sect disciples' expressions changed. One of them said, "Kill them." The 3 Jiyu family cultivators also reacted. They absolutely could not reveal today's matter. These 2 disciples were spies that the Jiyu family had painstakingly planted in the Mountain Universe sect. In the future, They might have the power to topple the Mountain Universe sect. They absolutely could not let the Ying Shan Immortal Academy disciples leak this news. However, just as the 5 of them were about to attack, they suddenly sensed 2 people rapidly approaching them. When the 5 of them turned around, their eyes suddenly widened. Their eyes flashed with horror. They saw tens of talismans in the sky turning into countless ice blades, ice swords, fiery beasts, wood thorns, vine whips, flying stone swords, and so on. All of them came crashing down towards the 5 of them. At this moment, the 5 of them no longer cared about killing the Ying Shan Immortal Academy disciples. They quickly used their own methods to block the attacks that filled the sky. Right at this moment, 2 figures took the opportunity to rush in. Junior brother Du, why is it you? And this is senior brother Tian. Du Jialuo handed 3 divine movement talismans to the 3 of them and said, "Let's go. There's not much time left. Now is not the time to be entangled with these people." The 5 of them took the chance to break through. Senior brother Sun seemed to have thought of something. He turned his head and said, "The 2 of you don't have to worry. I will definitely not reveal your identities to your sect. The 2 of you don't have to worry that the Mountain Universe sect will find out about this." Outside the space, Lu Ping sensed that the 5 of them were rapidly approaching the spatial passageway through the mysterious connection between the Purple Crystal Wasp King and the Purple Crystal Wasp. Reverend Li Nan was also slightly anxious like Reverend Shen Fang. However, he was still a guest elder of Ying Shan Immortal Academy. Even though he was trusted by everyone in the academy, there was still a layer of distance between him and Reverend Shen Fang and Elder Shen Ping. Reverend Shen Fang had already asked Lu Ping. It was not good for him to ask now. At this moment, Reverend Li Nan suddenly noticed that Elder Shen Ping, who had been expressionless all this time, suddenly revealed a trace of a smile. His heart immediately relaxed. Then, he saw Elder Shen Ping's eyes suddenly open and he said softly, "They're here." Although Elder Shen Ping's voice was soft, everyone's expression shook when they heard it. Because of the obstruction of the spatial passageway, although everyone could sense if someone was approaching the passageway, they could not tell which sect's disciple was from. Therefore, even if Elder Shen Ping discovered that someone had returned, it might not be a disciple of Ying Shan Immortal Academy. However, whether it was the Jiyu clan or the Mountain Universe sect's reverend, when they used their divine senses to observe the passageway, they did not discover any traces of disciples. Everyone did not mind. After all, Elder Shen Ping was extremely powerful. It was normal for his divine sense to be stronger than everyone else's. However, after waiting for a while, they still could not detect anyone approaching the spatial passageway. They began to look at each other. The new reverend from the Mountain Universe sect was the first to explode. He sneered and said, deliberately mystifying things, "You've lost the face of a late core forging cultivator." Chapter 719. As soon as the Mountain Universe sect spiritual master finished speaking, Lu Ping did not bother to hide his murderous intent. The Mountain Universe sect spiritual master felt as if he had fallen into an icy abyss. Clang, clang. A pair of scimitars suddenly appeared in front of the Mountain Universe sect spiritual master, protecting him. A treasure protecting its owner. This was the effect of a spirit-nurturing level life treasure. The Mountain Universe sect spiritual master's face turned purple. He hurriedly reached out and the pair of scimitars were kept in his heart space. There were usually 2 situations in which a treasure could protect its owner. One was when the cultivator was being ambushed, and the other was when the cultivator was frightened. Lu Ping did not ambush him, but the sharpness of his gaze and the murderous intent that emanated from his body had truly frightened the Mountain Universe sect spiritual master. He was frightened. He was frightened when he was face to face. Furthermore, his opponent was not a Dharma adept, but an 8th level core forging adept. He had actually been frightened by someone of the same level as him. The Mountain Universe sect spiritual master knew that from today onwards, he would become the laughingstock of the entire Hebei cultivation world. Lu Ping's scornful gaze swept past him. The Jiyu family spiritual master looked in the direction of the Mountain Universe sect spiritual master, suppressing his laughter, and looked in the direction of Lu Ping with fear. Actually, it was not just the Mountain Universe sect Spiritual Master. Spiritual Master Flying Rainbow, Spiritual Master Jiyu Hun, Spiritual Master Jiyu Ju, Spiritual Master Jian Ming, and the others were all shocked by Lu Ping's sudden burst of power. However, Lu Ping was mainly facing the Mountain Universe sect Spiritual Master, so they were only affected by the shockwaves. These cultivators, regardless of whether they were in the Mountain Universe sect or the Jiyu family, could be said to be extremely successful. The Dharma adepts had all seen this with their own eyes before, and they knew very well how they felt when facing a Dharma adept. However, in that instant, the feeling that Lu Ping gave them was exactly the same as when facing a Dharma adept. The scene fell silent. However, Spiritual Master Flying Rainbow and Spiritual Master Jiyu Hun suddenly froze. Of the two of them, one was a late core forging adept of the Mountain Universe sect, the other was a pillar of the Jiyu family. In that instant, the two of them saw the cultivators flying towards them through the spatial tunnel. 5 people, 4 at the 3rd level of the blood condensation realm. 5 people, 4 at the 3rd level of the blood condensation realm. Enlightened Master Jiyu Hun looked at Lu Ping in surprise. This time, only Yingshan Immortal Academy had first layer blood condensation realm disciples. But since they appeared together with 4 other cultivators, this meant that all 5 of them were from Yingshan Immortal Academy. However, what surprised Enlightened Master Fei Hong and Enlightened Master Jiyu Hun the most wasn't the fact that the 5 disciples belonged to Yingshan Immortal Academy, but the fact that Lu Ping noticed them so early on. And from Lu Ping's expression, it was clear that he could clearly tell that the 5 disciples were from Yingshan Immortal Academy. What a frightening range of divine sense! At this moment, all the enlightened masters present sensed through their spiritual will that someone was approaching the passageway. They also sensed the cultivation of the 1st level blood condensation cultivator. The cultivators from the various sects looked at Yingshan Immortal Academy with complicated gazes. On the other hand, Enlightened Master Shen Fang and Enlightened Master Li Nan were overjoyed. When Tian Yu, Du Jialuo, and the others came out of the spatial tunnel, the number of people who returned from the Yingshan Immortal Academy had increased to 13. The 5 of them walked towards Venerable Shen Fang. They wanted to hand over all the spiritual herbs they had harvested from the Fist Valley to Venerable Shen Fang. Then, Venerable Shen Fang would sort out the spiritual herbs. With Dabao's help, Du Jialuo walked towards the fenced courtyard in the deepest part of the spatial tunnel. Along the way, he found a few spiritual herb gardens and harvested plenty of 500-year-old and 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs. Moreover, he was only at the 1st level of the blood condensation realm. Being able to harvest as much as a 3rd level blood condensation realm cultivator was already very good. As for the other 4 3rd level blood condensation realm cultivators, including Tian Yu, their harvests were nothing to write home about. Daoist Shen Fang looked at the total of 5,000 to 6,000 spirit grasses taken out by the 4 of them and was slightly disappointed. However, looking at the excited faces of the 5 of them, he thought that the 5 of them were excited because they had survived a disaster in the void space. Originally, he wanted to reprimand them, but he swallowed it back. A moment later, 2 disciples of the Jiyu family and 2 disciples of the Mountain Universe sect rushed out of the space tunnel in a sorry state. They were 4 of the 5 people who had joined forces to stop Senior Sun and the others. However, for some reason, one of the disciples of the Jiyu family was missing. When Du Jialuo and the others used their talismans to break through the 5 people's obstruction, they were too anxious about the spatial tunnel's closing time. As a result, they did not know that Dabao's talismans had killed one of the Jiyu family disciples. The 2 disciples of the Jiyu clan glared fiercely at Du Jialuo and the other 4 disciples of the Yingshan Immortal Academy. They saw that senior brother Sun was also smiling at them. At the same time, he was whispering something to Daoist Shen Fang beside him. Their expressions turned serious. They lowered their heads and walked towards the cultivators of their own families. The 2 Mountain Universe sect disciples were even more dejected. There was even a look of fear on their faces. Rumble. Muffled rumbling sounds could be heard. After 3 months, the spatial tunnel finally collapsed and closed again. The next time it reopened would be 300 years later. In this trip to the Fist Valley, Yingshan Immortal Academy had lost a total of 5 disciples. Among them, 2 were at the second level of the blood condensation realm, and 3 were at the first level of the blood condensation realm. Of the 18 disciples from the Mountain Universe sect, 14 returned. However, 2 of them were spies from the GU family. Of the 20 disciples from the GU family, only 18 returned. As for the harvests, the various pill refiners had collected all the harvests the moment the disciples came out. Clearly, no one had any intention of revealing their harvests. On the Ying River, a large ship was sailing against the current. Lu Ping took out a small flag from his sleeve. It was the water-controlling flag that he had not used for a long time. Lu Ping held the small flag in his hand and waved it lightly. Instantly, the small flag turned into a 3-jong tall sail. The sail moved without any wind, and the speed of the ship instantly doubled. Lu Ping nodded at Du Jialuo and the 4 third-level blood condensation realm disciples. "The 4 of you, follow me." After saying that, Lu Ping took the lead and walked towards the cabin. Xian Fang was curious, so he followed behind Lu Ping. Although Li Nan was also curious about what Lu Ping had said to the third-level blood condensation realm disciples, and why there was another first-level blood condensation realm disciple, he hesitated for a moment. In the end, he did not follow Lu Ping. Lu Ping paused at the door of the cabin. He turned around and smiled at Li Nan. "Brother Li, come in and take a look. There are some things that I need Brother Li's help with." Li Nan was stunned for a moment. Then, he said excitedly, "This. Okay, I'll be right there." Inside the cabin, Xian Fang asked impatiently, "Senior brother, what did you ask them to do in the space? Why is it that the few with the highest cultivation level have the same harvest as the others? Some of them are even worse than the others." Lu Ping smiled. "Junior brother, don't be impatient. Did the 5 of you find the secret places I told you about?" Senior Marshal Brother Sun took the lead and said, "Elder gave us several secret areas, but Disciple, Junior Marshal Brother Ju, and Junior Marshal Brother Qian only managed to find 2 of them. The other places were blocked by space cracks, and disciples were unable to enter." After saying that, the 3 of them took out dozens of jade boxes that Lu Ping had given them from their storage artifacts. Xian Fang let out a strange cry. "Jade crystal boxes? Did you guys find a 3,000-year-old spiritual herb in there? That's not right. If there are 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs in the space of the Fist Valley, why didn't the Ying He, Dao Universe, and Ying Shan sects discover them after thousands of years?" Perfected Li Nan was shocked when he saw the jade crystal box. However, he considered one more thing. Previously, the space in Fist Valley had always been secretly controlled by Ying He and the other 2 factions. It was difficult for others to know what was going on inside, but Elder Xian Ping clearly knew about it. Why was that? Lu Ping noticed Li Nan's puzzled gaze. He did not explain but waved his sleeves and opened all the jade boxes. Xian Fang was so shocked that he almost coughed. "It's indeed 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs. There's almost 2,000 of them. Moreover, this is the double ice leaf, this is the scarlet flame grass, and there's also the rainleaf flower. These are all precious spirit herbs that are almost extinct in the cultivation world. Even among spirit herbs that are 3,000 years old, they are all extremely precious." Li Nan was already dumbfounded. If the Mountain Universe sect and the GU clan found out about so many 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs, the 2 sects would probably join forces to attack the Ying Shan Immortal Academy. Lu Ping's face was also filled with joy because he had found more than a dozen types of rare spirit herbs needed to concoct the spirit forging pellet among the spirit herbs. Lu Ping picked out all the spirit herbs and picked out about 400 of the spirit herbs that he needed. Then, he pushed the remaining 1,500 spirit herbs to enlightened Master Xian Fang and said, "Junior Marshal Brother, take these spirit herbs for now. You can pick some of them for practice in the future. As for the rest, give them to Junior Marshal Uncle Tianshan and ask him to keep them." "Ah!" Although Xian Fang was envious of these spiritual herbs, he quickly waved his hands and said, No, 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 senior brother, I am only familiar with refining mid-core forging pills now. The 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs are not in my hands. It's better to leave them in senior brother's hands. Lu Ping smiled and picked out a few of the spiritual herbs that were easier to refine from Zhenling's legacy elixir. There were about 100 of them that were commonly used to refine half-step Dharma pills. He handed them to the flustered Xian Fang and said, "It's better to be prepared. The improvement of one's alchemy skills is built on the foundation of wasting large amounts of spiritual herbs." Seeing that Xian Fang still wanted to decline, Lu Ping said, "Don't worry and take them. You don't have to worry about the elixir pavilion. Since I made the decision, those two won't say anything." Xian Fang knew that the elixir pavilion that Lu Ping mentioned was not the Celestial Academy's elixir pavilion, but the elixir pavilion of Zhenling. Those two naturally referred to the two grandmasters, Tianlu Laozu and Tianqin Laozu. Only these two had the authority to handle the 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs in Zhenling. Xian Fang knew that Lu Ping had a lot of influence. Although he was not an alchemist trained by the elixir pavilion, he was still the third grandmaster alchemist in the sect. His position in the sect was very important. Since he wanted to hand these spiritual herbs to him, no one else would dare to say anything. Chapter 720. Although perfected Xian Fang did not reveal that Lu Ping was an alchemy grandmaster, he had repeatedly said that these 3,000-year-old herbs could only be used to their fullest potential when they were in Lu Ping's hands. Perfected Li Nan, who was at the side, was naturally stunned. Could it be that this powerful elder Xian Ping was also an alchemy grandmaster? And from what perfected Xian Fang had said, elder Xian Ping's alchemy skills were obviously above perfected Xian Fang's. Thinking back to how elder Xian Ping had managed to convince the two alchemy grandmasters of the Mountain Universe sect and the Jiyu family with just a few words, who else could have such skills besides an alchemy grandmaster? Once he thought of an alchemy grandmaster, perfected Li Nan felt his throat tighten. This was an alchemy grandmaster. In the cultivation world, just this identity alone was enough to be mentioned in the same breath as a Dharma adept. Also, who were the two people that elder Xian Ping mentioned? Elder Xian Tian and Laozu of Tianshan? Obviously not, and from the tone of elder Xian Ping's words, it was obvious that he had placed himself in the same position as the two people. In the Yingshan Immortal Academy, the only person who could be compared to an alchemy grandmaster was Laozu of Tianshan. No matter what, elder Xian Tian was not qualified. Li Nan was also a quick-witted person. Otherwise, he would not have been entrusted with so many matters of the Immortal Academy by the old ancestor of Tianshan Mountain. A bold idea immediately emerged in his mind. Could the two that elder Xian Ping mentioned be alchemy grandmasters like him? Even perfected Li Nan himself was shocked by this thought. But immediately, perfected Li Nan remembered a rumor about the Yingshan Immortal Academy that had been circulating in the Yingshan mountain range. It was said that the Yingshan Immortal Academy was not actually founded by Guo Tianshan Laozu. There was definitely another power supporting it, and the Yingshan Immortal Academy was just a tentacle of this power that had infiltrated the Yingshan mountain range. Towards this rumor, perfected Li Nan had originally been skeptical, but now he was 70 to 80% sure that it was true. Perfected Master Li Nan was in a daze, and there was a hint of surprise in his daze, which naturally fell into Lu Ping and perfected Master Xian Fang's eyes. Perfected Li Nan was instantly alerted. When he turned around to look, he saw Lu Ping looking at him with a faint smile. Perfected Li Nan heaved a long sigh of relief and said, "I was shocked by the generosity of these disciples. 2,000, 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs. How could Ying He sect, Dao Universe sect, and Ying Mountain sect not discover any 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs after entering the Fist Valley space more than 10 times? Lu Ping was not bothered by it and said with a smile, they were just lucky to have obtained some ancient books passed down by the Ying Tian sect. From them, they were lucky enough to discover a hidden path hidden in a few space cracks. These disciples could be considered to have a narrow escape. After saying that, he looked at Du Jialuo and Tian Yu. Between the two of them, Tianyu had already found a hidden space with 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs before they met. Then, he and Du Jialuo followed Dabao into the deepest part of the Fist Valley space and found the Fengba courtyard. In the end, due to the lack of time, they could only pick more than 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs from the large spiritual herb garden around the Fengba courtyard. In addition to the spiritual herbs that Tianyu had found previously, there were close to 1,700 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs in total. Oh, so the two of you didn't manage to collect all the spiritual herbs in the deepest part of the space due to the lack of time. Not only did you leave behind a large number of 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs, but you also didn't manage to collect many 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs in time? Lu Ping asked Tianyu in surprise. Although there was a little pity in his expression, there was also a hint of joy. The few of you, hand over the bee swarms I gave you. Lu Ping made a few hand seals and a third-level blood condensation realm bee flew out from each of the 5 of them. After the 3 of them handed over 4 spirit beast pouches containing 50 bee swarms to Lu Ping, the buzzing of the bees suddenly sounded outside the cabin. Lu Ping casually opened the cabin door and 8 third-level blood condensation realm bees flew out. Suddenly, a 3-inch square gate that seemed to be made of gold appeared above Lu Ping's palm. All the bees lined up neatly and flashed through the gate. Footsteps sounded outside the cabin. The other 8 Immortal Academy disciples had obviously received Lu Ping's notice and came to the cabin together. After the 8 of them greeted the 3 enlightened masters, Lu Ping pointed with his finger and 13 golden talismans appeared in front of them. He said, "These are the talisman treasures that I made during my free time. They will be your reward for entering the space of the Fist Valley this time. Although these talisman treasures are different from each other, their power is more or less the same. Once they are used, even early-stage core forging cultivators will be heavily injured. They can be used to save your lives." The 13 talisman treasures not only shocked the 13 Immortal Academy disciples, but also Enlightened Master Xian Fang and Enlightened Master Li Nan were stunned by Lu Ping's generosity. Lu Ping looked at everyone's expression and smiled. He said, "After you return, you can go to Enlightened Master Xian Dao of the Immortal Academy to receive a high-grade magic tool each. You might not be able to use high-grade magic tools now, but you will be able to use them after you advance to the mid-stage blood condensation realm." Although the crowd did not know when Enlightened Master Xian Dao of the Immortal Academy appeared, and he seemed to be a tool refiner, a high-grade magic tool as a reward was enough for the disciples to cheer. One must know that in the North Sea, mid-stage blood condensation realm disciples were most commonly using mid-grade magic tools. Some disciples who were not doing well even used low-grade magic tools after advancing to the mid-stage blood condensation realm. Although the Middle Earth was rich, the Immortal Academy was still newly established. Even with Junling's support, they did not have the courage to let all the mid-stage blood condensation realm disciples use high-grade magic tools. Lu Ping looked at the disciples who were brimming with joy and nodded at Enlightened Master Xian Fang. Enlightened Master Xian Fang smiled and said, "With Senior Brother Xian Ping and Senior Brother Xian Dao as examples, my rewards are a little inferior." Enlightened Master Xian Fang took out 13 jade bottles and distributed them to the disciples. He said, "These are 13 bottles of sea soul pills. Take them after you advance to the 3rd layer of the blood condensation realm. It will help you break through the bottleneck of the 3rd layer and advance to the mid-stage blood condensation realm." Everyone happily accepted it, and only then did they reluctantly leave the cabin. Enlightened Master Li Nan sighed. "Elder Xian Ping is really generous. Even the disciples of the large sects are not as generous as you." Lu Ping smiled and said, "These disciples took the risk of dying in the space. Compared to the 5 disciples who died, they deserve these rewards." Lu Ping looked at Senior Brother Sun and the other 4 disciples who were still in the cabin. He took out 5 jade bottles from his storage artifact and said, "These are the half catty of monster honey I promised each of you. Although Du Jialuo joined the mission halfway, he also has a share of the reward." Although the disciples accepted the bottles respectfully, they obviously did not know what the monster honey was for. Was it for drinking water? Enlightened Master Xian Fang could not stand it anymore. One must know that Lu Ping's amethyst honey and amethyst royal jelly were handed over to the sect on a regular basis every year. The amethyst royal jelly was naturally divided between the two elders of the Pill Pavilion. As for the others, only the alchemy masters could get some. Compared to the preciousness of the amethyst royal jelly, Lu Ping handed over more amethyst honey to the sect. Moreover, most of the honey ended up in the hands of the alchemy masters of the sect. Enlightened Master Shen Fang could get 2.5 kati of amethyst royal jelly every year. This was because Enlightened Master Shen Fang had the lowest qualification among the alchemy masters of the Zhenling sect. Even so, Enlightened Master Shen Fang treasured the amethyst honey very much. It could be used as a panacea in alchemy. If the few of you really use this to drink water, it'll be a reckless waste of God's good gift. If you don't need these things, take them to the alchemy room and exchange them for pills that you need for your own cultivation. But it's best to exchange for pills that are more useful for breaking through bottlenecks. Don't exchange for ordinary cultivation pills. This way, with half a kati of amethyst honey, it will be enough for your cultivation to advance to the late blood condensation realm. Enlightened Master Shen Fang's words made senior brother Sun and the rest's eyes lit up. Only now did they know what kind of treasure the amethyst honey was. Lu Ping felt ashamed in his heart. In fact, most of the amethyst honey was used by Lu Ping to make tea. If Enlightened Master Shen Fang, who saw it as a reckless waste of God's good gifts, knew what he would think. After sending the 5 away, Lu Ping smiled and said to Enlightened Master Shen Fang, "Junior brother Shen Fang, I still have a lot of amethyst honey. Since junior brother wants to use it for alchemy, you can take half a kati." Enlightened Master Shen Fang was overjoyed. He had long wanted to ask Lu Ping for some amethyst honey, but because of the grudge between them decades ago, Enlightened Master Shen Fang was too embarrassed to ask. Lu Ping smiled and took out 2 jade bottles, one big and one small, from his storage artifact. The small jade bottle was made of chalcedony. Enlightened Master Shen Fang's heart tightened when he saw the small chalcedony bottle with the amethyst honey. Lu Ping smiled and passed the 2 jade bottles to him. Enlightened Master Shen Fang put the big jade bottle with the amethyst honey into his storage artifact. Holding the small chalcedony bottle in his hand, he suddenly stood up and bowed to Lu Ping. Senior brother's magnanimity is something Enlightened Master Shen Fang cannot compare. Although perfected Li Nan on the side did not know what was in the small jade bottle, for an alchemy master who was used to seeing rare treasures to bow so solemnly, it was obvious that the item in the small jade bottle was extraordinary. At this moment, Lu Ping handed another jade bottle to Enlightened Master Li Nan. "Brother Li, take this bottle of monster honey. Treat it as a gift from your little brother to Brother Li." Enlightened Master Li Nan nodded his head. Enlightened Master Li Nan did not know about the amethyst honey, but from Enlightened Master Shen Fang's reaction just now, he knew that the demonic honey was extraordinary. He said, "How can I take it? I don't know anything about alchemy. It's a waste for me to keep it." Lu Ping said, "Brother Li, you don't have to be so polite. Just take it." Lu Ping stuffed the bottle of amethyst honey into Enlightened Master Li Nan's hand. He then turned to the corner of the cabin and said, "Come out. Tell me, what else did you find in the space?" "Boss, you have to help me break the seal first." A rodent that looked like a ball rolled out from the corner of the cabin and complained. Chapter 721. Enlightened Master Li Nan had already noticed that when Elder Shen Ping brought the 5 disciples into the cabin, a blood condensation realm rat demon slid out from the sleeve of the early blood condensation disciple and hid in a corner of the cabin without making a sound. At that time, Lu Ping and Enlightened Master Shen Fang didn't say anything. Enlightened Master Li Nan was a smart person and naturally wouldn't point it out. It was just an early blood condensation realm rat demon. What could it do? However, when this rat demon ran out and spoke in the human language, Enlightened Master Li Nan couldn't help but be surprised. It wasn't because Dabao could speak in the human language at the early blood condensation realm, but because enlightened Master Li Nan could see that Dabao's cultivation was actually sealed. What surprised enlightened Master Li Nan was that this rat demon wasn't a high-level monster. It was the lowest-level spirit-seeking mouse. This kind of spirit-seeking mouse was usually at the late blood-refining realm at most. It was already considered heaven-defying for a spirit-seeking mouse to break through to the blood condensation realm. However, this spirit-seeking mouse was clearly not only at the early blood condensation realm. Lu Ping cast a few hand seals and a purplish-blue light shone on Dabao's body. It was as if Dabao's body was resonating. Before Dabao could enjoy the feeling of regaining his core forging realm cultivation, he suddenly realized that his cultivation had only increased to the mid-blood condensation realm. Da Bao asked fearfully, "Boss, is there something wrong with your sealing technique? Why is your cultivation only at the mid-blood condensation realm and it's not moving anymore?" Lu Ping smiled and said, "Dabao, do you want to recover your core forging realm cultivation base now and then drop from the second layer to the first layer? Or do you want to slowly recover your cultivation base this way so that you can strengthen your foundation and build a foundation for your future cultivation?" Dabao asked cautiously, "Boss, didn't you say that even if my cultivation drops to the first level, I can still strengthen my foundation after cultivating again?" Lu Ping only said one sentence, "The latter can go further." Dabao immediately jumped up and said, "Then of course it's the latter." It was hard for him to jump so high with such a fat and heavy body. However, he forgot to ask Lu Ping how long it would take if he used the latter method. "Since that's the case, let's cut the crap. Hurry up and show us what we've gained in the Fist Valley." Dabao was very depressed that he couldn't return to his human form for the time being, but he still didn't dare to disobey Lu Ping's order. He took out a jade box from the storage pouch hanging from his neck. After opening it, there were 4 big and 6 small beads inside, each containing a dense qi. "Is this a spirit-gathering pearl?" "There are actually so many of them." This time, Daoist Li Nan finally saw a treasure that he recognized. However, there seemed to be too many of these treasures appearing at once. Even Daoist Li Nan himself could not remember how many surprises he had received today. From the looks of it, there should be at least 4 medium-sized spiritual veins in the area formed by the spatial crack. No wonder there is such a large spiritual herb garden inside. So many spiritual veins have been nourishing these spiritual herbs for hundreds and thousands of years. Each of the 4 big spirit-gathering pearls could nurture a small spiritual vein, while the 6 small spirit-gathering pearls meant 6 small spiritual veins. Lu Ping kept the jade box and looked at Dabao. "What else?" Dabao took out dozens of jade boxes, which were filled with spiritual herbs that were thousands of years old. Most of them were 3,000 years old. It seemed that these spiritual herbs had been collected and preserved for thousands of years. Obviously, they were left behind by the disciples of the Ying Tian sect who were guarding this space. Lu Ping scanned with his divine telekinesis and realized that most of the spiritual herbs had preserved their medicinal properties. Among them, there were many extremely rare spiritual herbs. There were also dozens of spiritual herbs that could be used to refine spirit forging pills. Lu Ping did not hesitate and kept all the boxes in his storage artifact. "What else?" Dabao complained. "Boss, there are some tools that can be used to cultivate spiritual herbs. Although there are many of these things, they are all magic tools. At most, they are top-grade magic tools. Moreover, most of them can't be used in battle." "Dabao, I forgot to tell you. Using the second method to break the seal is equivalent to cultivating for the second time. Only when you reach the 6th layer of the blood condensation realm will you be able to break the second seal and advance to the late blood condensation realm. Similarly, only when you reach the peak of the 9th layer of the blood condensation realm will you be able to break the 3rd seal and advance to the core forging realm. Don't blame me for not reminding you that this time's cultivation is not a true recultivation. If you want to shorten the cultivation period by taking some kind of pill, it's possible." "Boss, are you trying to trick me?" Dabao shouted angrily. He took out another jade bowl from his storage artifact and said, "Boss, let's use the first method. Being in the blood condensation realm is too stifling." "Too late. Lu Ping took the jade bowl and looked at the bowl of clean water that emitted a fragrant aroma. Hey! Heaven and earth wonder water. Dabao hung his head dejectedly and said, "Boss, you're lucky. This was found in a well in the fenced courtyard of the space grotto Heaven." Dabao paused for a moment and said, "That well is a place where spirit veins converge. There is an abundance of spirit energy in that well. However, there is a jade bowl hanging above the well. There is already a bowl of clean water in it. I can tell that this jade bowl is not ordinary, so I brought it back." Lu Ping first carefully examined the jade bowl in his hand, then looked at the clean water in it. He suddenly raised his head and said, "You took this jade bowl away from the well. What else is in it now?" Dabao smiled proudly and said, "I knew it was a treasure. Nothing can escape my, Lu Dabao's, detection. Don't worry, boss. I've already placed another jade bowl on the water in the well. In fact, there is an identical jade bowl on the stone edge of the well. When I saw it, it was obvious that the two jade bowls were taking turns. Boss, the clean water in this jade bowl is obviously not ordinary, right? Do you think it's time for my cultivation to? Let's not talk about this anymore. I have my own plans. Give me the last item first." When Dabao heard Lu Ping's words, his expression changed. Then, he cried out in surprise and jumped 2 steps back. He said, "Boss, how did you know that I have one last treasure? And it's the most important treasure." Lu Ping glanced at Dabao and added on his behalf, "Ah, I'm scared of you." This time, Dabao carefully took out a wooden box. When Lu Ping saw the wooden box, he was startled. When he held the wooden box in his hand, he saw the secret spirit sealing runes on the surface of the wooden box. For a moment, he was speechless. When spiritual master Xian Fang saw this, he asked, "Senior brother, do you already know what is in the box?" Lu Ping nodded and turned to Dabao. "Have you seen what is inside?" Dabao shook his head and said, "I can feel that the thing inside is extraordinary. However, the seal on the surface of the box is not something I can open." Lu Ping nodded and suddenly said, "We've arrived at the Immortal Academy. I'll wait." Only then did Spiritual Master Li Nan and Spiritual Master Shen Fang realized that the giant boat had returned to appear not far from the back mountain of the Yingshan Immortal Academy under the control of Lu Ping's water-controlling flag. Li Nan and Spiritual Master Shen Fang naturally knew that Lu Ping was unwilling to tell them about the treasure inside the wooden box. Hence, they got up and walked towards Spiritual Master Liu Shenyuan and Spiritual Master Qi Zitsai, who were welcoming the group back. On the pier, enlightened Master Liu Shenyuan sighed when he saw the 13 disciples disembarking. "I've only managed to nurture a little over 20 blood condensation disciples in the past 10 years. In just 3 months, I've already lost 5. Qi Zitsai smiled faintly and said, "That's why those who survive can go further." Spiritual Master Liu Shenyuan nodded but did not say anything. However, there was a trace of sadness in his eyes. After greeting Liu Shenyuan and Qi Zitsai, Lu Ping directly sat on Die Gui's back and followed the river towards the forbidden area of the back mountain. Inside the rocky cavern, Lu Ping carefully placed the wooden box on the stone platform in front of him. He formed a few hand seals and rays of bluish-purple light flowed out like streams of water, washing away the seals on the wooden box's surface layer by layer. Lu Ping originally obtained the Filing sect's restriction-breaking secret technique. After that, he received guidance from Spiritual Master Liang Shenfeng. Later on, he obtained the complete inheritance of the 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman from the Ying Tian Dojo. Lu Ping's understanding of the restriction-breaking secret technique had reached an extremely high level. Otherwise, Lu Ping would not have been able to make the 3-colored restriction-breaking talisman in such a short time. In fact, Lu Ping could now make the 4-colored restriction-breaking talisman, but the success rate was not high. Previously, Lu Ping estimated that a 3-colored restriction-breaking talisman would be enough, so he did not give the only 4-colored restriction-breaking talisman to Dabao. The seals on the surface of the wooden box became fainter and fainter until there was no trace of the seals on the surface of the wooden box. Finally, the wooden box cracked automatically with a crack. Lu Ping opened the wooden box and there were 3 golden pills of different sizes wrapped in spirit-sealing talismans. Lu Ping let out a long breath and said, "It's really this thing." Lu Ping opened the 3 spirit-sealing talismans and the 3 pills suddenly burst out with a strong vitality. This aura instantly filled the entire cultivation room of Lu Ping. If Lu Ping had not made a guess and set up a restriction in the entire cave, this vitality would have quickly spread to the entire forbidden area of the back mountain. The Wood Luan Golden Pill. It really was the Wood Luan Golden Pill. According to legend, it could be used to produce a large number of high-level spirit herbs in an extremely short time. It was a treasure that almost all Dharma adepts in the entire cultivation world coveted. It was also the innate magical power that almost caused the extinction of the Wood Luan race. 3 Wood Luan Golden Pills. One was in the early core forging realm, one was in the middle core forging realm, and the biggest one was in the late core forging realm. Chapter 722. In the blink of an eye, a year had passed. Lu Ping woke up from his closed-door cultivation. He smiled after scanning the stone room with his divine sense and opened the restriction on the stone room. Lu Daohua hopped in from outside the stone room. When she saw Lu Ping, she giggled and said, "Brother, shouldn't that jade bowl be given to Peach Blossom?" There was a jade bowl in front of Lu Ping. It was found by De Bao in the well in the fenced courtyard of the Fist Valley. Back then, there was a bowl full of clean water in the well. This bowl of clean water was a kind of heaven and earth oddity. It was a kind of strange water that could be used to improve the tripure true pupils. This kind of strange water was extremely rare. It was the water in the well that was nourished by the spiritual vein all year round. After that, it gradually condensed into a water essence. This water essence was different from the essence of Kuei water. It didn't have much effect when used to condense a protective aura. Instead, it was quite miraculous when used to cultivate other special techniques and abilities. This kind of water essence would normally evaporate after being formed in the well water. It was extremely difficult to collect. However, this jade bowl was a strange treasure. Although it was only condensed with a treasure restriction, it was quite effective in collecting some spiritual liquid and maintaining its special effect. Moreover, there must be a special formation left by the Ying Tian sect in the well to help this jade bowl condense the water essence. The scale of Lu Ping's spiritual herb garden in the House of Gold grew bigger and bigger. There were more and more types of spiritual herbs. Previously, Luan Yu took care of it, so Lu Ping basically didn't have to worry about it. After Luan Yu left with Laozu Wujiu, Lu Ping could only put part of his energy into the management of the spiritual herb garden. However, this situation allowed Lu Ping to regain his freedom after Lu Daohua transformed. Lu Daohua was the transformation of the spirit demon peach tree. Although she received the inheritance of the Longhuai ancestor, she had a quiet and elegant temperament. She naturally liked spiritual plants and flowers. Moreover, her talent was very beneficial to the growth of these plants. Therefore, Lu Ping gave her the task of managing the entire spiritual herb garden in the House of Gold. Lu Daohua obviously enjoyed it. After that, Lu Ping gave Lu Daohua all the books related to the cultivation of spirit herbs, flowers, and trees. He also taught her the concoction methods of the 100-flower dew, 1000 fragrance dew, and a few other spirit liquids. All these years, Lu Daohua had been keeping Lu Ping's spirit herb garden in good order. Some of the 500-year-old spirit herbs had already begun to mature. A year ago, when Lu Ping was preparing to go into seclusion to absorb the water essence to improve his tripure true pupils, this little girl saw this jade bowl and clamored to take it away. Even though this jade bowl was rather miraculous, it was only an ordinary magic treasure that had been condensed with a single restriction in the end. Thus, he promised to give this jade bowl to her after he came out of his closed-door cultivation. Lu Ping knew that Lu Daohua wanted to use this jade bowl to collect the morning dew from the spiritual herb garden. The morning dew contained spiritual energy and the essence of plants. It was essential for cultivating all kinds of spiritual liquids. Lu Ping smiled as he watched Lu Daohua happily leave with the jade bowl. His eyes glowed brightly. Now that his 3 pure true pupils had condensed 6 types of mystical water, the effects of the 3 pure true pupils were even more prominent. Lu Ping took out a jade bottle and poured out 8 spirit forging pills. After his trip to the Fist Valley, Lu Ping had collected a few more cauldrons of spirit herbs for the spirit forging pellets. However, he didn't want to reveal the fact that he had the myriad wonder due on him. Although he had refined 2 cauldrons of spirit forging pellets and stabilized the success rate at 40%, Lu Ping didn't plan to hand over the 8 spirit forging pellets to the sect. Including the 8 spirit forging pills that Lu Ping had secretly left behind, he actually had 14 spirit forging pills. However, Lu Ping didn't plan to concoct more. Aside from the fact that he couldn't use them for the time being, his alchemy skills were still improving. Although he already had a 40% success rate, spirit forging pellets were far more valuable than Avatar Realm medicinal pellets. Therefore, concocting a large number of spirit forging pellets was still not worth it. After making so many, Lu Ping also realized that the spirit forging pill was not as powerful as he had imagined it to be. There was a limit for cultivators to condense spirit objects. They could only increase the number of spirit objects they needed by 2 grades each time. These 2 grades limited the number of spirit objects a cultivator could smelt. Even the spirit forging pill could not do anything about this. The so-called spirit forging pill could increase the grade of the spirit objects that a cultivator smelted. It referred to a cultivator who, due to various reasons, could not reach the requirement of reaching 2 grades of spirit objects. For example, if a cultivator smelted a low-grade earth spirit object for the first time, then the second time he smelted a high-grade earth spirit object. This limit meant that no matter how many spirit forging pills a cultivator took, he would not be able to break through. Moreover, each cultivator could only take 3 spirit forging pills. However, because of various accidents, this cultivator's strength was only enough to refine a mid-grade earth-step spirit object. Thus, the significance of the spirit forging pill was revealed. It could help a cultivator reach the highest grade of spirit objects that could be refined. When Jiang Tianlin Laozu advanced to the late stage of core forging, he smelted 2 high-grade earth spirit objects. When he smelted a spirit object for the 3rd time, with his strength at that time, he could only smelt 1 mid-grade heaven spirit object. However, because of the 2 spirit forging pills, Jiang Tianlin Laozu managed to smelt 2 mid-grade heaven spirit objects in one go and formed a high-grade golden core among the 8th-grade spirit objects. The same was true for Liu Tianling Laozu. Originally, Liu Tianling Laozu could only smelt 2 low-grade heaven spirit objects like Shen Ling Sect's Feng Shutao, and Feng Shutao's strength was even higher than Liu Tianling Laozu's. However, after taking the 2 spirit forging pills, Liu Tianling Laozu managed to smelt 3 low-grade heaven spirit objects in one go and barely formed a 8th-grade golden core. After advancing to the transcendent stage, Liu Tianling was able to suppress Feng Shutao. The second function of the spirit forging pill was to shorten a cultivator's cultivation time. Chu Shencheng, Liang Shenfeng, Guo Shenshan, and the fallen spiritual master Li Shenyin originally needed to accumulate a large amount of time to smelt low-grade heaven spirit objects. However, after taking the spirit forging pill, they all formed a 7th-grade golden core ahead of time and advanced to the transcendent stage. Even so, the effect of the spirit forging pill was enough to make the entire cultivation world go crazy. It was no wonder that Fei Ling Sect's destruction was attributed to the spirit forging pill. However, when he thought of the spirit forging pill, Lu Ping had a new idea. The North Sea was barren. Even if Fei Ling Sect had the method to refine the spirit forging pill, there were 2 constraints. The first was naturally the dozens of extremely rare 3,000-year-old spirit herbs that were used to refine the spirit forging pill. These spirit herbs were almost extinct in the cultivation world, but Ying Tian Sect's Fist Valley had planted a large amount of these spirit herbs. Ying Tian Sect was Fei Ling Sect's ally in the Middle Earth back then. Could it be that the 2 sects had a secret agreement about the spirit forging pill? Thinking of this, Lu Ping unconsciously thought of the wonder dew of 10,000. In fact, The real key to refining the spirit-forging pill was the wonder dew of 10,000, the rare and almost extinct spirit herbs. The real factor was still the wonder dew of 10,000. Every refining of the spirit-forging pill required a drop of the wonder dew of 10,000. Although there were a total of 36 drops of the wonder dew of 10,000, the rarity of the wonder dew of 10,000 was even higher than some high-grade heaven-rank spirit items. Then, where did the wonder dew of 10,000 that Fei Ling sect needed to refine the spirit-forging pill come from? The wonder dew of 10,000 was not like those spirit herbs that could be obtained through meticulous cultivation. It was a spirit item of heaven and earth that was nurtured by the heavens and earth. Obtaining it depended entirely on luck. Who knew where such a rare treasure could be found? However, Lu Ping immediately thought of the East Sea's perished secret grounds, the Seven Stars Grotto Heaven's Golden Canyon, and the pool of 10,000 poison liquid in his House of Gold. Lu Ping's heart was in turmoil. Could it be that the birth of spirit items of heaven and earth could really be controlled through some kind of method? Lu Ping pinched his fingers and counted the time. It was time for perfected Liu Shenyuan to return to the North Sea. Lu Ping rummaged through his interspatial mystic instrument and found a bunch of things. These were the things he wanted to get rid of enlightened Master Liu Shenyuan and bring to Hu Lili and his friends. Although Zhenling had secretly mastered the ultra-long-distance teleportation array, and after perfected Xuanzhen's modification, it could now teleport 5 people at once. However, each teleportation required 2 top-grade spirit stones. This was still a huge expense for Zhenling, who was now much richer. In addition, the other end of the teleportation array was located in the territory of the demon race. Therefore, every time Zhenling used the teleportation array, they were extremely cautious. Although Lu Ping now had 5 or 6 top-grade spirit stones in his hands, he was reluctant to spend them on the teleportation array. This time, in addition to perfected Liu Shenyuan, there were 2 other core forging stage cultivators who came with perfected Liu Shenyuan. The other person was actually perfected Li Nan. After many years of testing, perfected Li Nan was finally accepted as a registered disciple by Guo Tianshan Laozu. Guo Tianshan allowed him to return to the North Sea to practice a more complete cultivation method. This was an opportunity for him. Perfected Li Nan was able to rely on an incomplete and not very good cultivation method to cultivate all the way to the 6th layer of core forging. It could be seen that his aptitude, perception, and perseverance were all good. The only thing he lacked was an opportunity. This time, Laozu accepted him as a registered disciple was an opportunity for him to go further. Now that Zhenling's foundation was far from what it used to be, it was not too difficult to find a suitable cultivation method for him. Of course, for people like perfected Li Nan, even if they became Zhenling's official disciple, they would not have the opportunity to practice a true cultivation method. However, perfected Li Nan did not have such extravagant hopes. He was already very satisfied to be able to advance to the late core forging stage. However, after perfected Li Nan went to the North Sea this time, he would no longer have the opportunity to return to the Central Plains. This was a rule that Zhenling had set when Yingshan Immortal Academy was first established. Yingshan Immortal Academy could only be an extension of Zhenling's influence. All the outstanding disciples it nurtured had to be sent to the North Sea, and Yingshan Immortal Academy could never be controlled by a Central Plains disciple. Perfected Li Nan did not care about this. All he wanted was to improve his cultivation. It did not matter where he went. At this time, he was still immersed in the excitement and shock of becoming a disciple of Tianshan Laozu and finding out about Zhenling. The last place was given to a disciple who had just advanced to the 4th layer of the blood condensation realm. Lu Ping raised his eyebrows. He knew this disciple. He was one of the 3rd layer blood condensation realm disciples who had entered the Fist Valley. Now that he had advanced to the 4th layer of the blood condensation realm, he had the qualifications to become Zhenling's disciple. Hence, he was sent back to the North Sea. Lu Ping was a little surprised. Although the Immortal Academy would not let the local disciples take charge, there was no need to send them to the North Sea so quickly. Moreover, The original plan was to send the local disciples to the North Sea once they advanced to the core forging stage. Why was it so urgent now? Chapter 723. Although Lu Ping found it strange, he was just a mid-blood condensation realm minor repairs, so he didn't take it to heart. Instead, perfected Liu Shenyuan pointed at the disciple and said, "Come and greet your uncle Master Shenping." The disciple quickly stepped forward and said, "Disciple Sun Zichuan greets Uncle Master Shenping." Lu Ping was taken aback, then he smiled and said, "So you've accepted a disciple, senior brother. I was wondering why he wanted to return to the North Sea so quickly. So he's going back with senior brother." Lu Ping didn't mind at first, but after hearing that Sun Zichuan was perfected Liu Xuanyuan's disciple, he took a closer look and smiled. "Your foundation is not bad, and you're cultivating the fifth earth true body technique that made Uncle Master Tiankang famous. It's quite similar to senior brother's cultivation technique. No wonder senior brother took a liking to him." As Lu Ping spoke, he took out a jade bottle from his storage artifact and said, "The fifth earth true body technique is one of the few techniques in our sect that doesn't have a high requirement to enter the Dharma manifestation realm. However, this technique has a high requirement for the cultivator's physical body. This jade bottle contains a type of spiritual liquid that I concocted many years ago. It's a pity that it's not very useful for core forging cultivators, but it's quite effective for blood condensation cultivators." Lu Ping looked at Sun Zichuan, who was looking at perfected Liu Shenyuan, unsure whether he should accept the gift or not. Lu Ping directly threw the jade bottle into Sun Zichuan's hands and said, "There's a total of 36 drops of spiritual liquid in this bottle. Every time you immerse your entire body in the water, drop 9 drops of spiritual liquid. After 4 times, your physical body will be greatly strengthened, and your cultivation of the fifth earth true body technique will definitely be twice the result with half the effort." When enlightened Master Liu Shenyuan heard that Lu Ping's bottle of spiritual liquid could actually strengthen his body, he immediately wanted to reject it. Enlightened Master Li Nan and the others were shocked. However, when they heard that the bottle of spiritual liquid could only be used by blood condensation realm cultivators, they couldn't help but show a regretful expression. Clearly, everyone knew what it meant to strengthen a cultivator's body. Reverend Liu Shenyuan chuckled at Sun Zichuan and said, "If it's someone else giving you a gift, I might have to reject it. However, since it's a gift from your Uncle Master Shenping, you should just accept it. Otherwise, you'd be letting down his title of Boy of Many Treasures. Your Uncle Master's methods aren't something an ordinary person can match up to. Moreover, this bottle of spiritual liquid is indeed very beneficial for your cultivation of the fifth earth true body technique." Sun Zichuan hurriedly thanked Lu Ping. Perfected Li Nan was already familiar with Lu Ping's endless methods, so when he heard Sun Zichuan's words, he had a look of agreement. This spiritual liquid was actually a failed product of Lu Ping's attempt to create a new type of spiritual liquid. Originally, he had used the juice of the golden nuts and the spirit demon peaches, and then mixed it with various other plant essences in different proportions. Originally, he had wanted to use it for himself, but it didn't seem to have any effect on him. Instead, he had wasted a golden toughness pill and a spirit demon peach. Fortunately, these things weren't completely wasted. At least they could be used on blood condensation adepts. The tide of Mara had caused a huge disaster to the training world on the north bank of the Yulon River. Many unranked clans had been wiped out by the combined forces of the Asuras and the Shomor demonic cultivators. Even some of the clans that had barely reached the level of a small-scale power had their gates broken through, and countless of their disciples had died. Even mid-sized clans like the Jiyu clan had lost their Dharma adepts. It was clear to see how terrifying this tide of Mara had been. On the north bank of the Yulon River, the only sect that didn't suffer any losses during the Mara disaster was the Spiritual Martial Sect. After the Spiritual Martial Sect displayed their full strength to the cultivators of Hebei, they no longer hid their strength and bided their time. Instead, they sent messengers to communicate with the Holy Lands, preparing to establish their status as a large sect. Once the spiritual martial sect confirmed their status as a large sect, the spiritual martial sect would be the only large sect in Hebei. According to the rules of the Great Calamity, the entire Middle Earth would be led by the 5 Great Holy Lands to wage a great war against the devil Luo. The various large forces were the spokesmen that the 5 Great Holy Lands used to deploy the various cultivation forces in the Middle Earth. They would receive the full support of the 5 Great Holy Lands, so the Spirit Martial Sect could take this opportunity to clean up the entire Hebei cultivation world and establish their own position in the Hebei cultivation world. The Hebei cultivation world must become a pile of loose sand. Otherwise, if the Spiritual Martial Sect succeeds, then once the Immortal Academy rises, our sect will definitely be suppressed by the combined forces of the various sects under the Spiritual Martial Sect. We might even be suppressed by the 5 Holy Lands. Then, it will be difficult for our sect to establish a foothold in the Middle Earth. Liang Tianfeng Laozu paused for a moment, then continued, the Middle Earth is rich and populous. In just a dozen years, other than the fact that the Immortal Academy's own system is not complete, it has already become self-sufficient in cultivation resources. It has even supported our sect with a batch of spirit herbs and low-grade spirit materials. Our sect must not give up on establishing a sphere of influence in the Middle Earth. Just look at the Crystal Palace and you will know how difficult it is for overseas forces to establish a sphere of influence in the Middle Earth. The Heavenly Moon sect has blocked the Crystal Palace for thousands of years, and one of the 5 holy lands behind the Heavenly Moon sect, the Avalon of 5 Elements, has yet to make a move. One must know that the Crystal Palace is a huge sect that is as famous as the 5 holy lands of the Middle Earth. Therefore, the Spiritual Martial Sect must fail this time. Not long after sending off Daoist Master Liu Shenyuan, the various sects in the Hebei cultivation world joined hands to encircle and annihilate Mara was getting closer and closer. Daoist Master Liang Tianfeng, who had been traveling in the Hebei cultivation world for a year, had finally returned. The few Laozu once again sat together to discuss, while Lu Ping, Shen Tian, Shen Bei, and Shen Yu, the 4 late-stage core forging 3rd-generation disciples of Zhenling, were also present. Daoist Master Shen Cai had taken over Daoist Master Liu Xuanyuan's position as the Mountain Elder of the Immortal Academy, so she was able to participate. After listening to Liang Tianfeng Laozu's analysis of the situation in the entire Hebei cultivation world, as well as his opinion of the Spirit Martial Sect, Guotianshan Laozu smiled and said, originally, I had planned to let junior brother Qiancheng oversee the Immortal Academy. Senior brother Liang and the old man, one in the open and one in the dark, would first plot against the various sects Laozu, causing the various sects to fight against each other. Now, it seems that the situation has become even more complicated. Chu Qiancheng Laozu's eyes lit up as he laughed and said, lock the mountain gate tightly, then tighten the mountain gate. After the old man advanced to the Dharma phase, his hands were itchy. This time, it would be good to see the methods of the Dharma phase cultivators of the Central Plains. Liang Tianfeng Laozu also nodded and said, fortunately, the other sects, especially the few powerful medium-sized forces, would definitely not want the Spirit Martial Sect to become a large force and be under its control. This is our chance. However, this time, we will just muddy the waters and let the various sects and the Spirit Martial Sect fight to the death. It would be best if all the cultivators from other places who came to encircle Mara were also involved. The more chaotic the situation is, the more advantageous it is for us. There are cultivators from other regions participating in the encirclement of Mara? Lu Ping asked in surprise. Among the few 3rd-generation disciples present, only Lu Ping had the right to interrupt the conversation of the 3 Laozu. Liang Tianfeng Laozu smiled and said, that's not surprising. Although it is dangerous to encircle Mara, it is also a great opportunity. You are also someone who has fought with the demonic cultivators and the Shura, so you must have obtained a lot of good things from them, right? Lu Ping thought of the weapons condensed from the essence of the various attributes on the Shura's body, especially the blood Shura of the Dharma phase. Each of their weapons had the power of a spirit treasure, which was obviously a great temptation for the Dharma phase cultivators. Although the Blood Shora's weapons had to go through some complicated processes before they could be used by the cultivators, to be able to have a quasi-spirit treasure with him, this time it was all worth it. As for the treasures on the Dharma phase blood demons, Lu Ping only knew about the soul crystal. As for the other things, Lu Ping did not know, because the body of the blood demon that he and Jiang Tianlin Laozu had attacked had been taken away by Jiang Laozu. At this time, Guo Tianshan Laozu turned to Lu Ping and said, "This time, the encirclement of Mara was proposed by the spiritual martial sect and the other 5 strongest medium-sized forces, and the 12 small forces in the Hebei cultivation world all responded to it. The Celestial Academy is now one of the 12 small forces in the Hebei cultivation world, so the Celestial Academy will also have to send at least 1 late core forging adept and 1 Dharma adept to encircle Mara. That will be the 2 of us." Beside him, Shentian Zhenren said with some surprise, "The 18 families will each send 1 Dharma adept. Doesn't that mean there are 18 Dharma Laozu?" Guo Tianshan Laozu laughed and said, "More than that. The 12 small forces will each send 1 Dharma Laozu, and the 5 medium-sized forces will send 1 mid-Dharma adept and 1 early Dharma adept for a total of 2 Laozu. As for the spiritual martial sect, as the main initiator of this operation, there will be 3 Laozus. One of them, a late Dharma adept, Wu Lingfeng, will be the leader of this encirclement of Mara." When everyone heard this lineup, they all gasped. Xianbei Zhenren murmured, "With a total of 25 Dharma Laozus, what can't they flatten with such a lineup?" Liang Tianfeng Laozu looked at his disciple with dissatisfaction and said, "You find it hard to believe? Sigh, no wonder, it is indeed rare to see such a grand event in the North Sea. However, this does not include those who volunteered to participate in this operation, as well as those who came from other regions. Otherwise, the scale of this operation would be even larger." 3 days later, the Yingshan Immortal Academy announced that they would be sealing their mountain and activating the protective array. They left behind 3 late core forging adepts, Shentian Zhenren, Xianbei Zhenren, and Xuanyu Zhenren to guard the sect. The Mountain Universe sect also sealed their mountain. The Mountain Universe sect only had 1 Dharma adept, Yushong Laozu. After taking away 1 or 2 late core forging adepts, the Mountain Universe sect had no choice but to seal their mountain. Liang Tianfeng and Chu Tiancheng, the 2 Laozus, had already left the Immortal Academy. Guo Tianshan Laozu and Yushong Laozu met up with the Jiyu clan adepts and headed in the direction of the spiritual martial sect. At this time, Lu Ping was swimming along the Ying River, admiring the beautiful scenery on both sides of the river. When he heard that one of the 2 Dharma adepts that the Jiyu clan had sent out was actually Jiyu Chang Laozu, he had decisively requested to act alone. Although Lu Ping was very confident in his ability to disguise himself, he did not have much confidence in facing a mid-Dharma adept. The Ying River was a tributary of the Yulon River. The Ying River meandered down for thousands of miles before merging into the Yulon River. When he thought of the Yulon River, Lu Ping thought of the Koi Zhenren who had fallen at his hands, as well as the secret map that he had obtained from the Koi Zhenren. Chapter 724. The Shura was bloodthirsty and the demonic cultivator devoured souls. In fact, the Shura and the demonic cultivator had another big hobby, and that was spirit devouring. That was why there was a saying in the cultivation world, Mara spirit devouring. Therefore, when the Shura and the demonic cultivator stopped wreaking havoc in the cultivation world and escaped to somewhere far away or gathered in one place, it meant that the place where Mara stayed must have a spirit vein gathering. The higher the number of demonic luos gathered at a location, the higher the quality of the spirit vein there would definitely be. The higher the quality of the spirit vein, the more abundant the cultivation resources produced by the spirit vein would be. There might even be spirit stone veins among them. At the intersection of the Yulon River and the Ying River, the terrain of this area was much lower than the surrounding plains. Every time the flood season of the Yulon River and the Ying River arrived, this area would become the place where the 2 rivers would flood. Over time, this place would become a swamp, and the Yulon River would split into several small streams that flowed into the Yulon River. And after the Shura and demonic cultivators that were wreaking havoc in Hebei were repelled by the cultivators of the various sects, they gathered in groups in this wetland called the Inyu Swamp. This time, the battle for the spirit vein was also one of the goals of the various sects to encircle Mara. Moreover, with so many Shura and demonic cultivators gathered in this swamp, most cultivators believed that there was at least a large spirit vein hidden in this swamp. Otherwise, it would be impossible for so many Mara to be attracted to this place. On the 9th of September, the various sects of the Hebei cultivation world gathered outside the Inyu Swamp and began to encircle the demonic cultivators and Shura hidden in the swamp. Before this, there were already cultivators continuously gathering towards a small town called Shay Town outside the swamp. The small town was bustling with noise because most of the Dharma cultivators from the various sects in Hebei would meet at the spiritual martial sect and then head towards the Inyu Swamp. Shay Town had instead become a gathering place for all sorts of rogue cultivators and small groups. After Lu Ping's arrival, many places in the small town had been opened up by the cultivators as a place for private transactions. They were taking advantage of the great movement of the entire Hebei region's cultivation world to exchange for what they needed. Lu Ping was rather interested in this sort of marketplace that was like a marketplace for mortals. With his current knowledge and experience, even ordinary Dharma adepts might not be able to match up to him. Everyone was curious and hoped to pick up some hidden treasures from these marketplaces. Naturally, Lu Ping was no exception. However, Lu Ping was still a little cautious when he looked at the small town in front of him. This kind of trading market was formed spontaneously because there wasn't a strong force presiding over it. Hence, the order was often extremely chaotic. There were even cases of people turning against each other and refusing to acknowledge their debts. Here, strength was often the key. Lu Ping laughed involuntarily. Although he was alone and in the eyes of outsiders, he might be an easy target to bully, but with his current strength, as long as it was not a Dharma adept, he would not care about 3 to 5 ordinary late core forging adepts. If there really was someone who did not open his eyes, he would just send them away. This was because most of the cultivators here were prepared to follow after Laozu and enter the Inyu Swamp to take advantage of the situation. However, the Inyu Swamp was filled with danger. The danger inside was not only from Mara, but also from the ferocious beasts and even demons hidden in the swamp. Therefore, this spontaneous marketplace was mostly filled with all sorts of healing, recovery, and antidotes. There were also all sorts of treasures, talismans, and other items that could temporarily increase a cultivator's strength. Of course, there were also all sorts of other cultivation items, but compared to these two, there were far fewer. Before the Inyu Swamp was occupied by Mara, it had been a buffer zone between the human race and the Yulon River demon race. There were many ferocious beasts that had yet to gain sentience but were extremely powerful. There were even rumors that the spirit-taming sex cultivators had once appeared in the Inyu Swamp. However, the Inyu Swamp was also a treasure trove. Throughout the years, it had attracted a large number of adventuring cultivators in search of various cultivation resources. This time, the North Sea's cultivation world had entered the Inyu Swamp on a large scale. In addition to encircling Mara and searching for the large spirit veins and cultivation resources Mara had occupied, another important reason was to completely occupy the Inyu Swamp and expel the demon race's forces, turning it into the territory of Hebei's cultivation world. Lu Ping casually strolled through the small town, inspecting the various stalls set up on both sides of the road. Naturally, there were very few items that caught Lu Ping's attention. Although there were a few items that Lu Ping felt were worth it, there were also a few stalks of 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs and top-grade spiritual materials. Although they had been mistaken as low prices, Lu Ping would not take advantage of them. At this moment, Lu Ping's face showed a hint of helplessness. He looked around and found that no one was paying attention to him. Then, he walked towards a remote corner of the town. After a while, when Lu Ping came out again, he was followed by 2 excited young girls. On Lu Ping's shoulder was a fat mid-stage blood condensation realm rat demon. These two young girls were Lu Daohua and Lu Qina. Lu Qina had always been a lawless person. She couldn't bear the loneliness of staying in the House of Gold for a long time. Lu Daohua, on the other hand, had never seen the prosperity of the human world. She was tempted by Lu Qina's words, so she wanted to come out and take a look. Although Lu Ping was helpless, he didn't want his spirit pet to be a canary in a cage. He could only let the two of them play behind him. However, to prevent their identities from being leaked, especially Lu Qina's identity as a spirit demon, Lu Ping gave them 2 demon transformation chakrams. The magical thing about the demon transformation chakram was that when a transformed demon cultivator wore it, they wouldn't be exposed. When a human cultivator wore it, the demon cultivator would think that they were the same kind. Lu Ping originally had 3 demon transformation chakrams, but Jiang Tianlin took one from him when he left the North Sea. It was said that his teacher, Liu Tianling, wanted to use it. Lu Ping naturally didn't dare to neglect it, so he only had 2 left. Lu Qina and Lu Qina played with Dabao in the small town. When they saw so many cultivators setting up stalls and selling all kinds of items, they couldn't help but become interested. They focused all their attention on the stalls on both sides of the street. Lu Ping followed behind the 3 of them and let them play. He also wanted to take the opportunity to test their knowledge. The cultivators setting up stalls around were all people with good taste. When they saw that Lu Ping was following behind them calmly and didn't point out anything, they all thought that Lu Qina and Lu Qina were rich young ladies who went out to play. They secretly thought that they might be a fat sheep, so they all called them over to their stalls to have a look and encouraged them to buy all kinds of cultivation items from their stalls. Unexpectedly, the 2 sisters were so easy to fool. Although Lu Qina was the strongest in terms of cultivation techniques, she was the worst in terms of knowledge. However, she had followed Lu Ping for a long time and had seen a lot of things. Lu Qina had been in human form for 10 years and took care of the spiritual herb garden for Lu Ping. Lu Ping had given her a lot of ancient books about spiritual herbs. In addition, she was a spiritual peach tree, so she was naturally able to distinguish between good and bad spiritual herbs. There was no need to mention Dabao. Dabao had been with Lu Ping for the longest time and was also the most trusted by Lu Ping. He had seen most of the treasures Lu Ping obtained. Therefore, it could be said that among all of Lu Ping's spiritual pets, Dabao's strength was the worst, but his knowledge was the best. Many cultivators tried to pass off some things as high-grade items, but they were all exposed by Lu Qina and the others on the spot, making these people embarrassed. There were also those who flew into a rage out of humiliation. However, before they could vent their anger, Lu Qina's aura surged and her mid-core forging cultivation erupted. Many of the surrounding cultivators who were jeering shut their mouths. It was not that no one could deal with Lu Qina, but how old did Lu Qina look? At such a young age, she had such an amazing cultivation. If she didn't have a tyrannical background, who would believe it? At this time, everyone remembered that Lu Ping was following behind this little sister, but he didn't speak. When they swept him with their divine sense, they found that the person in front of them was like a boundless sea. They couldn't see the bottom, and only felt that he was unfathomable. Everyone put away their thoughts of deceiving them and began to introduce some valuable things to the 2 of them. This time, Lu Qina couldn't distinguish them. However, although Lu Qina couldn't distinguish them, there was little Peach Blossom next to her. Although Lu Daohua hadn't been in human form for long, she could keep her heart. She had been in human form for 10 years. On weekdays, she took care of Lu Ping's spiritual grass garden and read some ancient books on spiritual plants collected by Lu Ping. In addition, Lu Daohua was a spirit beast in human form, so she was very sensitive to spiritual materials such as plants. Since she didn't know something, she could distinguish between good and bad through her qi talent. After a few rounds of negotiation, not only did Lu Daohua not lose out, but she also picked up a lot of things. For example, she mistook a 1,000-year-old spiritual grass for a 500-year-old one, and some spiritual grass that were very similar but had opposite medicinal properties. She could even distinguish between some spiritual materials such as plants. If there was something that even Lu Daohua couldn't identify, Then it would be Dabao's time to perform. However, Dabao was only a mid-blood condensation demon beast that hadn't transformed yet, so he didn't dare to openly appraise these items. He only secretly transmitted his voice to Lu Qina and Lu Daohua. The two of them walked half a street and even picked up a few 3,000-year-old spiritual grass. However, Lu Qina was a talkative person. She didn't keep it to herself and instead showed off proudly. This made the cultivators who sold the spiritual grass to them very depressed. If it weren't for the fact that they were afraid of the two beautiful girls in front of them, these people might have beaten them up on the street and taught them a lesson. Lu Ping looked at the two of them and smiled bitterly. Although the cultivators who were picked up by the two of them seemed to have admitted defeat, Lu Ping didn't think that these people would give up just like that. Lu Qina and Lu Daohua had made dozens of transactions along the way and spent hundreds of thousands of spirit stones. This kind of wealth was enough to make people want to take the risk. Lu Ping wasn't afraid of these people. He just found it troublesome. However, looking at the two girls' excited expressions, Lu Ping didn't have the heart to interrupt them. Chapter 725. Although Lu Ping had seen thousands of 3,000-year-old spirit herbs in the Fist Valley, and although the Central Plains was much richer than the North Sea, 3,000-year-old spirit herbs were considered treasures to any cultivator. For those core forging and blood condensation cultivators, their value was even higher. With Dabao's help, Lu Qina and Lu Daohua actually managed to pick up a dozen 3,000-year spirit herbs from the pile of miscellaneous items. For those blood condensation realm cultivators and early core forging realm cultivators who thought they were 1,000-year or even 500-year spirit herbs, this was undoubtedly a bolt from the blue. The corners of their eyes twitched uncontrollably. A few cultivators, who seemed to be a group, slowly followed behind the two little girls. Although the two little girls' cultivation bases were not low, these people were obviously used to sneak attacks. Clearly, they were not afraid of some rookie cultivators who were stronger than them but had underestimated the dangers of the cultivation world. As for the forces behind them, they were originally rogue cultivators who had fled to the ends of the earth. After doing this, who could do anything to them? However, to be these two girls, the young man behind them was an eyesore. Flower Protector? Although they couldn't see through his cultivation level, the disciples of these large forces had a lot of treasures on them. Moreover, they were often people with high standards but low abilities. It was a good opportunity to do this business together. However, before these people could surround Lu Ping inadvertently coughed twice. Suddenly, these people stopped in their tracks. Their eyes suddenly popped out, and then they stood motionlessly in the middle of the street. The five of them had originally formed a semicircle around Lu Ping and were slowly moving towards him from behind. Previously, they didn't notice the crowd on the street, but now that the five of them had suddenly stopped in the middle of the street, they blocked most of the street. Hey, don't block the way. What are you standing here for? Sir, please move aside. I have urgent matters to attend to. The five cultivators continued to ignore him. As a temporary gathering point for the cultivators from Hebei province to charge into Rich Jade Swamp, the number of cultivators gathered here was not small. In just a moment, over 20 cultivators were blocked in the middle of the street. Most of these cultivators were rogue cultivators. They might not be strong, but they were ferocious enough. Otherwise, how could they have survived until now? Those who made a living on the edge of a knife would have killed a few people, and how many of them were good-tempered? Someone immediately started cursing, and a few hot-tempered ones pushed the five of them. Plop. Thump. This is. The five of them were pushed to the ground almost at the same time. Only then did everyone realize that something was wrong with the five of them. Their eyes were wide open and protruding, and their ears were bleeding. Were they dead? The onlookers immediately felt a chill run down their spines. These five people had obviously been ambushed at the same time while walking on the street, but the way they died was too strange. How could they suddenly die in an instant? There were quite a few experts among the onlookers, but they knew that with their own abilities, they would definitely not be able to do this. Some of the more observant people immediately realized that the position where the 5 of them had been standing before seemed to be secretly surrounding and ambushing someone. However, it was clear that they had kicked an iron plate and lost their lives in the process. Some quick-witted people immediately thought of the 2 girls who had caused a sensation on the street just now. Could it be that these 5 people wanted to rob those 2 girls, but were killed by them without batting an eyelid? In the distance on the street, there were still quite a few cultivators who had set up stalls, eagerly greeting the 2 girls. Although these 2 girls had vicious eyes, they were generous. As long as they took a look at something, they would basically be able to pay a reasonable price. Of course, if the cultivators who set up the stalls were blind and sold a 3,000-year-old spiritual herb as a 500-year-old spiritual herb, they would naturally be happy to take advantage of it. There were quite a few people who had ideas about the 2 girls. However, after seeing the fate of these 5 people, they decisively gave up on their previous thoughts. When a knowledgeable cultivator saw the 5 people who had fallen to the ground, he was immediately surprised and said, "Aya, isn't this the 5 tigers of Mount Xing? The spirit martial sect has offered a bounty of 1,000,000 spirit stones and 3 spirit communication magic treasures to take the lives of these 5 people. How could they die on the streets and not want the bounty of the spirit martial sect? What? These are the 5 notorious bandits of the 5 tigers of Mount Xing? Aya, that's true. How could he die here? The strength of 5 middle-stage core forging cultivators. Some of the people who had ulterior motives were even more terrified. These 5 tigers of Mount Xing were quite famous existences among the rogue cultivators of the core forging stage in the Hebei cultivation world. Legend has it that each of these 5 people had reached the middle stage of the core forging stage, and the leader had even reached the peak of the 5th level of the core forging stage. These 5 people had been doing some business in the Hebei cultivation world all year round, causing many forces in the Hebei cultivation world to want to get rid of them. Unfortunately, these 5 people were not weak. The 5 of them had a set of joint attacks. They were also extremely cunning. Their whereabouts were erratic. As a result, they had been free and unfettered in the Hebei cultivation world for many years. Legend has it that these 5 people even had the lives of 3 late-stage core forging cultivators in their hands. Among them, the 5 of them were the most proud of secretly killing a late-stage core forging cultivator of the Spirit Martial sect. This provoked the Spirit Martial sect to issue a bounty for the lives of these 5 people. However, for several years, these 5 people were still at large. However, they had restrained themselves a lot. The Hebei cultivation world had rarely heard of these 5 people. Originally, some people thought that these 5 people had already hidden outside of the Hebei cultivation world. They didn't expect that these 5 people would appear here. Furthermore, they appeared in front of everyone in such a way. The streets were bustling with cultivators. There were hundreds of them, if not thousands. There was no lack of hidden dragons and crouching tigers among them. To be able to avoid these cultivators and quietly kill these 5 people, this kind of method was not something that the onlookers could hope to achieve. Could it be the young man in green behind the 2 girls? When some of the more knowledgeable people saw the bodies of these 5 people, they guessed that after their divine will was forcefully destroyed, they lost control of the inner yuan in their bodies and died from squeezing out of the core space. And to be able to destroy the divine will of 5 mid-stage core forging cultivators in one go, what kind of cultivation level was this person at? The Dharma stage. It seemed that even a normal Dharma stage cultivator could not achieve such an effect. Some of the scouts from the major forces looked at the back of the figure in green in the distance, their eyes faintly revealing a hint of awe. To have the strength of the Dharma stage at such a young age, what kind of giant was behind him? What kind of identity did the 2 little girls have to be able to have Dharma stage cultivators as bodyguards? Lu Ping's divine will swept behind him and swept past his surroundings. He found that the divine will that was spying on him and Lu Qina had suddenly disappeared. Lu Ping's face revealed a trace of a smile. At this time, he heard someone behind him shout, "That's not right, Who took the 5 tigers of Xingshan's storage artifacts? Hurry up and hand them over. The 5 tigers of Xingshan usually do business without any capital. They must have accumulated a lot of good things in their hands. Which damned person took it away without saying a word? It was on me just now. How do you know it was still on you just now? Nonsense. I have been watching for a long time. Stop talking nonsense. Since the people who killed them don't want them, first cut off the heads of these 5 people and go to the spirit marshal sect to collect the reward. This head is mine. Get lost. On the other side of the street, Lu Ping took 5 storage artifacts from the mouth of Dabao, who had just drilled out of the ground. After opening it, he casually looked at it and threw 4 of them to Dabao. The remaining one seemed to be used by the leader of the 5 tigers of Xingshan. Lu Ping rummaged through it for a while and then took out a map. On it was a map of the lush jade swamp, but it was clearly not complete. However, Lu Ping did not plan to enter the lush jade swamp with the cultivators of the other sects. Since that was the case, with this incomplete map in hand, it could save Lu Ping a lot of energy. It seemed that after the 5 tigers of Xingshan killed the cultivators of the spirit marshal sect, they hid in the lush jade swamp and even built a secret cave in the swamp. It was because of this secret cave that the 5 of them escaped the massacre after Mara entered the lush jade swamp. The reason why the 5 tigers of Xingshan took the risk to enter the lush jade swamp again was for the secret cave that the 5 of them had opened in the swamp. Looking at the mark on the map that marked the secret cave of the 5 people, Lu Ping thought to himself, no matter what, I have a place to stay. At this moment, Lu Ping frowned and looked in the direction of Lu Qina and Lu Daohua. At this moment, the 2 of them were standing in front of a stall and seemed to be arguing with the cultivator who set up the stall. Lu Ping walked forward and did not wait for him to ask the 2 of them what happened. When he saw the person who set up the stall, Lu Ping's expression inevitably became serious. When the person who set up the stall saw Lu Ping, his eyes couldn't help but narrow. Then, as if nothing had happened, he continued to bargain with Lu Qina and Lu Daohua. This person's aura is so strange. The person who set up the stall was an unkempt man. This cultivator had obviously concealed his aura, making it impossible to see how strong he was. However, the moment Lu Ping saw this cultivator, he sharply caught a trace of his aura. Uncle, although your mystical item is not bad, the item that Sister Qina used to exchange for it is also extraordinary. You should know that Sister Qina took out an elixir for a half-step Dharma adept. Uncle, you are a late core forging adept, right? Perhaps this elixir can heal your injuries. When the surrounding cultivators heard that this young girl was holding a half-step transcendent stage pill in her hand, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. The cultivator who set up the stall was an unkempt man with a sallow face. It was obvious that he had suffered a serious internal injury. There were a few items on display in the stall. Although there weren't many items, from Lu Ping's point of view, these items were quite valuable. This unkempt man was using these items on the ground to exchange for a few pills that could heal the injuries of late core forging cultivators. Among the items was a 1-foot-tall glass bottle filled with a brown liquid. This was the treasure that Lu Qina had her eyes on previously. She had intended to exchange a bottle of healing pills that Lu Ping had refined for a half-step transcendent stage pill. Unexpectedly, this man suddenly changed his mind. Naturally, Lu Qina was unwilling, so they argued. When Lu Ping looked at the brown liquid in the glass bottle, his eyes narrowed. It was a mystical item like the green jade glass liquid. Qina could only tell that it was a water-based mystical item, but she didn't know that it was as rare as the 10,000 poison liquid. Like the growing soil, it was a high-grade mystical item. Using a bottle of a half-step transcendent stage pill to exchange for it was indeed a little low. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.